Oh, right. This thing is set to automatically go to just Matt at the beginning of these things. I forgot because he does his little. I didn't even think to have a hang up ready.
You invited me here.
No, well, so Matt, when he does his show, because we're on his show right now, it starts with Matt's hang up for the week, and he goes solo before he introduces his guest, and is all like, "What's up, everybody?" And I'm going to talk about ice cream and people stealing my cereal. What's up, everybody? Welcome to the hang up. Sorry that we're starting a little bit late, but on the bright side, there's not really a lot of calls queuing up. I don't know if that's because we hadn't started or because we need a better title. In fact, I think I'm going to change the live title to like Atheists Debate Christians, MAGAs, and Wendy's Apologists.
Wendy's Apologists is crazy. Wait, so when Matt talks about his hang-ups, is it like just things that he's annoyed with for the week? I'm realizing I've only ever watched the like clipped full calls of Matt doing the hang-up, and I've never watched a full show.
You've done his show, so you don't remember that?
No.
Didn't you?
I've never done a show with Matt. I've done when we did like a fundraiser or maybe the election stuff, like I did that.
Huh.
And I've had lunch with him, but I've never done the hang up. And I've been to his house.
What's the Brosiverse people called? What are they called? The Manosphere, what are those?
The whatever podcasts?
No, but like what is like the group? Like Incel. I'm just gonna write Incels. Atheists Debate Christians, MAGAs, and Incels. Called Jimmy Snow and Alyssa Ljub. So this show was so gonna go great, and everything was on track to be wonderful and amazing. And then as we were about to go live, there was a power outage at my house. It came back on pretty quick, but there's a bunch of stuff that got kind of like not fried, but my computer would need to be reset to do more. But because we put so much into the pre-production, that would like add a lot to everything. That wouldn't be so fun. So we're kind of making some adjustments on the fly here, and I hope people will bear with us, but if they don't, that's kind of their problem.
Wait, but you didn't answer my question. Is when he talks about his hang-ups, is it just like stuff that annoyed him this week?
Yeah, that's just what we do with our podcast. So Alyssa and I do a podcast twice a week. It's called The Line is a Podcast. If you all haven't checked it out, it has its own channel on YouTube. And we are sometimes, that's right, you're here rocking merch. I'm not.
I am. I don't know why I didn't just move the camera down and why I lifted myself up instead.
It seemed more provocative this way, I think. It was like people were like, what's going on over there? But then it wasn't what they thought it was. And
I can't move the camera down too far because I'm wearing sweatpants, and I'll be so honest, I spilled so much buffalo sauce on them earlier today because I was eating buffalo tofu, and like I don't know why I like made the tofu and then I went to shake it with the buffalo sauce without a lid on anything, and so I'm just like holding an open bowl full of sauce and food, and I'm just going like this, and a whole bunch of it obviously fell on me, and I was like, well, and that's a user error, and that's a big dumb idiot if I've ever seen one. My God.
Jimmy has a UPS, by the way. People said Jimmy needs a UPS. That's why we still need the reset, is because not everything got powered off, but some things did. So the UPS runs all the main important stuff. But I actually need to also add, because I've moved recently, I need to add a series of UPSs to kind of everything else to keep everything working. But I do have one of those. Oh man, what was the thing?
What thing? Do you want me to say something I'm annoyed about?
No, why don't you the Line is a Podcast. Well, yeah, we can do that. We can do that in a moment. Check out The Line is a Podcast. We are unhinged over there. Just for the record, like y'all think that I don't keep anything to myself and that I'm like too uncensored over here sometimes. I assure you, we are a nuisance over at The Line has a Podcast. And we just talk about the news each week.
It's actually shocking, because if there's anything that's going to ruin our reputation, it's The Line has a Podcast, because I'm convinced that it's just us and that no one like, and I know that people listen to it because I go in the Patreon and I'm in the comments of the YouTube, like I'm interacting, but in my pea-sized brain, I'm talking to my friend Jimmy, and then me and Jimmy are talking to our other friends who are the people who watch and listen to the podcast.
Yeah.
So one day I'm going to say the thing that gets me in big trouble. And I don't know what it's going to be, but it's going to be something stupid for sure.
Trying to say something stupid like the R word, that or something like that.
Right.
Something like that. I feel like it's funny because there's a call kind of queuing up. Somebody wants to talk about how we police that one. I need something. I use the word redacted now. As you know, mine is redacted. That person's being awfully redacted. I'm okay. I just feel like I'm a little bit still on edge from all of the stuff that was happening earlier, but we'll get into calls here in a moment. And looks like we have at least one theist calling in. We'll see, because it's an American, and yet calling from the web caller. It's kind of like 50% chance that it's going to be a troll. I don't know. Let's find out. Luthien, I'm going to take the mouse for just a moment here.
So to clarify, per the comments in the chat, I don't want to get canceled, obviously. But if there were ever going to be a place that would be like a breeding ground for that, it would be me saying something stupid. Like, there was a time I read a chat where someone said, "Oh, my brother was diagnosed with Asperger's," and then the whole chat got so fucking mad at me, and I was like, I'm reading their comment. And then
wait, you're not supposed to even say Asperger's anymore? Like, you're not allowed to acknowledge that it ever existed, that it was ever a diagnosis? What is the... Also, it's a little fucked up to go and tell people a word that they've had a relationship with their whole life because doctors gave it to them is one they're not allowed to use anymore either.
That's how I felt. I was like, this guy had whatever. So whatever. And I just read the comment, but the chat went crazy.
Yeah.
And I was like, y'all, it's going to be something like that. So yeah.
Someone says refarted. That's kind of funny. That's pretty refarted. That's pretty good. That's pretty funny. I don't know. I've got, I honestly, I'm glad we have a call about dumb language stuff to talk about, but we'll get to that in a minute, because I'm on the one side, my position is very much, it's not really that hard to not be a shitty person. And if it is obvious that this is like an issue for a lot of people, just use better language, be better at communication. Don't be so reliant on the old things. But on the other hand, I also think that our side, we get way too distracted by it. And it's like, dude, we've got to fucking move. We have such bigger fish to fry. So
I feel like it's, my real opinion is I never want to offend anyone ever. And if I'm in, to the best of my ability,
that's not me. I'm happy to offend shitty people who have shitty views.
But like, if in our conversations, even like, I mean, on the podcast, yes, but like, if in our conversations you say redacted to me and it doesn't bother me, then I don't really see like that big of an issue with it, especially when your actions outside of that are aligned with respecting all communities of people and wanting to be supportive of people that, you know, whatever, need all kinds of support and whatever. I don't know.
We'll get to that call before too long. Let's make sure that the call system is working first. So let's bring in Charlie real quick, because we had to reset a bunch of stuff. I'm not sure. Hey, Charlie in the UK, first of all, can you hear us? Charlie in the UK, are you there? Do I have Charlie? Will you say hi to Charlie in the UK? See if they hear you.
Hi, Charlie. Do you hear us?
No. This does not bode well.
I think so.
Okay. Hi, Charlie. Oh, and suddenly I have no internet.
Hold music was annoying me and I was listening to the stream, so I didn't hear you straight away. I am here now.
Do you hear me as well, Charlie? This is Jimmy.
Yes, I can hear you, Jimmy.
Oh, good. We hear you both. Okay. Well, that was just a test because we had some technical issues beforehand. A moment ago, my internet just also popped up. I don't know. There's all kinds of stuff going on. I may have to do some troubleshooting over the weekend if things get too bad. But Charlie, it looks like you're an atheist. We'll give you a quick chat here. What was the question you were calling in with, though? I'm not quite positive what it is.
So I think that basically what it is since I am still deconstructing Christianity, for me, I still am kind of like figuring out how to kind of square the circle that was, well, Jesus existed, and I know that this isn't true, but I'm not 100% sure why. He was, the guy. So like, I'm at the point where I'm like, I know that based on, I think, what we know about historical Jesus, he was a dude rather than the guy. But I think the thing is I don't know enough about that to be like super certain about what I feel in terms of that.
Real quick, I want to say to Josh in the who apparently called and hung up, call back. My goodness, call back, Josh. I appear to have been accused of defending Israel and playing a part in getting Trump elected. I don't think you know who the fuck you were calling.
Yeah,
what the fuck is that is a big piece of stupid if I've ever heard him. Josh, I hope you call back. I challenge you. That's the dumbest summary I think I've seen thus far. Okay, so Charlie, you want to know what you're feeling like you are having trouble letting go of the historical idea that Jesus existed. Is that what you were saying?
No. I'm pretty convinced that, given what we know historically and from what exploration I have done, there is a there's a very strong probability that someone called Jesus, who was some level of inspirational speaker who led to the Christian movement, existed, because there are. Obviously, I'm not sure. I'm not a historian who can tell you exact things, but I feel like whilst I don't necessarily believe Jesus was God, and I don't necessarily know how to kind of deconstruct that, I do believe Jesus existed to some extent because we do have extra biblical references to him, and also just the fact that Christianity exists makes the most sense if it was based off some level of Jesus existing, because of how close to when Jesus exists it purports to have started.
Okay. So what? Why am I losing connection again?
Of.
Sorry, I think I lost connection again. What was that last part? Do you hear me?
Well, I don't know when you stopped hearing me.
I heard basically just the last sentence or two is all I think I lost.
Basically, I'm just saying that I think there is evidence to suggest that Christianity was probably based off some guy called Jesus, but that's all I can really say.
Okay. And so what?
I don't know. It's just like I'm kind of like I'm at this point where there's definitely sort of this cognitive dissonance between, well, I'm pretty sure the truth is there was a guy called Jesus. We can't know that much for sure about him, but he did some stuff in his life.
What's it matter? What's it matter of, I believe Muhammad existed. I believe Joseph Smith existed. Mormonism still bullshit. Islam is still bullshit. Christianity is still bullshit, whether Jesus existed or not. I'm curious what's the question, or where's the struggle?
I think, Charlie, there's space for you to accept that he was a real person without accepting that he was a magician. Like, I think there's balance that you can find there, in that it almost like it reminds me of do you know who what is his name? Gary Vaynerchuk?
I don't know.
He's like an inspirational speaker. And he's like, oh my God, there's a period of time he was everywhere on the internet, driving me crazy. But he's an inspirational speaker. He's very successful. And what would stop somebody from writing an entire book and claiming that he is capable of miracles because he has been so inspirational that he's been able to motivate people to create better realities in their life. He's been able to inspire them to push further past the challenges that they had before. Like, that is still not a god. That is just a person who is capable of motivating people, which is beautiful. But what stops someone from rewriting that into whatever story they want to, and then trying to convince a whole bunch of people that this is the truth and that this is a god? And we've now actually, honestly, the United States is a really good example of how it's actually really not that hard to convince a whole bunch of people that somebody is something that they are not. So I think it's just, I can understand where you're like, well, oh, I might have frozen. Okay, I think I'm back.
Something weird's happening with my connection. I don't know what it is. We're praying it goes away, but God isn't answering for some reason. He's weirdly absent again.
But I think that you can just draw the line at him being a historical figure that has no supernatural element to him. He was just a guy. And then some people wrote stories about it. I think one of the things that like really changed my perspective of the way that the Bible came to be was learning about how Scientology came to be, because there are millions of people who are Scientology, or maybe I don't know if it's millions, actually, I just made that up. There are lots of people who are Scientologists, and Scientology is based on a book that was written not that long ago and was written by a literal sci-fi fantasy author, and then he just decided to tell people that it was the truth, and he was really good at convincing people that that was the case. So, it happens, and human beings are just looking for answers, and that's where they felt like they could find it at that time, which is okay. But we also used to believe that fire was magic, and now we understand, we know better. So I don't know if that was helpful.
Yeah, I think that I think part of my issue was was that I had that I was kind of having that belief and finding it hard to accept, given that I had kind of, the main reason for me I justified my own belief had been like, well, Jesus existed, and it feels like, based on what I know, the most plausible explanation was that he was God. But I know now that that's wrong, and I think just kind of changing my view on that is something that was taking time. So I'm not sure if you necessarily said anything I hadn't heard before, but it was definitely good to hear it again. I feel a bit,
what's then the Charlie? I guess I'm still trying to figure out your question.
I guess my kind of question was, how do we know for absolute certain that Jesus wasn't God in some ways?
What? That's not how things work, Charlie.
I know.
Hang on. Alyssa, you don't prove God exists by failing to prove he doesn't exist. Unless by failing you prove it's because of his existence. You literally, the reason why we don't believe Jesus is God is because I have no reason to believe in a God, and I have no reason to believe in the mythical version of Jesus at all. Even so, total amount of evidence for his existence ever is very light, in fact. And so I understand why you come to the conclusion. I'm entirely agnostic on it. I'm not a mythicist, but I'm not yes, for sure he existed either. Certainly Christians existed around then, and there's lots of movements and preachers and shit like that happening around that time. So all of those are things that were present, but I'm not a person who's going to say like, yes, for sure he existed or for sure he didn't. But when you say, how do we know for sure Jesus isn't God? How do we know for sure my butthole isn't God? Like they've got equal amounts of evidence for each other. And actually my butthole has a lot more documentation that it exists. Maybe one day even more on a, $5 a pop basis. I don't know. a website of some kind. It's just not how it works. How do we know that anything isn't God? That's not how deciding if you believe in something should work. That's not being skeptical. That's not being reasonable. That's not being logical. So I don't know. If you're asking, how do I know that Jesus isn't God? I don't know Jesus isn't. Well, it really depends on, as far as the actual development of Christianity into a monotheistic religion from its animist and polytheistic roots. I actually think you can draw a through line of basically cavemen going, oh, where thunder from, becomes gods and representing gods through everything. That is obviously not true, and that is ultimately what very straight through line developed into Christianity. And once you can use that to sort of debunk Christianity, you can actually become more of a, no, I know Christianity isn't true, a sort of hard atheist. And I would put myself in that camp. But no, I as far as like when magic is the option, if we're saying in a natural world, when magic is literally, how do we know magic isn't happening? Then literally, how do we know anything about anything ever?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I guess it. Yeah.
I think also the reason that I like the Scientology example is because the same way that, like, the Bible is just a book. We have no evidence to prove any of it is right. Like, it literally is just a book, and it's been changed a bunch since it was allegedly written. So, like, it's not a good resource. Like, it's not a good source to base any claim on. And for people who don't believe in something like Scientology, you look at that and you're like, wait, that is crazy town. How the hell did they get this many people to get on board with this? What the fuck? But that's a book that was written more recently. And like, hypothetically, you could make an argument that, like, well, at least we know the guy who wrote it. Like, the Bible is like literally completely made up. Like, we have no evidence to show that any of it is beyond a fantasy book. Like, it has just as much credibility as Harry Potter. So, like, it's you know, like, how do we know that Harry Potter is not God?
Similarly, bigoted authors.
And I've always said
I have
that.
to agree with that.
Yeah.
God, I hate Rowling.
Yeah. Before we jump out too far, though, into a new topic, is that enough to give you something to think about there? Because, yeah, I think it's you just got to rearrange your questioning.
I guess so. I feel like it's just kind of, I know that what I have been thinking and feeling is illogical because it is, you know, somewhat tied up in past emotions and just my complete, you know, way of thinking. So, it's just that, I mean, I understand when you kind of made fun of what I was saying, but because I know it's silly, but, you know, it just, like, I wish I didn't have to feel like I was associated with these silly things.
Well, you just have to practice.
Just give it time.
You have to practice.
Yeah.
You have to, instead of, I'm not saying don't call. It's fine that you called, but for the most part, when you have that, you need to ask yourself those questions, and eventually it becomes second nature. Right now, you're working against a lifetime of programming of literally, like, ascribe everything to, like, oh, you've said a little prayer and then you found the belt you were looking for. That's God. You've got to just, I don't know why I give a Mario theme, but you have to deprogram. That's what this channel's for. Deconstruct, make it a natural thing to be a skeptic, to be inquisitive in a logical and reasonable way, and not be so silly about things.
Yeah, well, thank you anyway. Goodbye.
Okay, thanks
Charlie. That was really sweet. She's so
very abrupt.
I know. It reminds me of, have you ever heard people talk about, like, the amount of time it takes for you to get over a relationship, this is not true, and I don't agree with it, but it's like a whatever thing that people say. The amount of time it takes for you to get over someone that you broke up with or broke up with you is half the length of the relationship. I feel like maybe that's a good deconstruction rule. It's like, maybe you won't be fully over it. You think? I thought for me it was less.
I mean, I don't know about years ago, and it'll also depend on how deep you are in, but, like, Mormonism still rears its ugly head in my life from time to time. It doesn't just, It doesn't just go
sure.
away ever. I was in it for 20 years. I've been out of it now for 15 or so. It's not there. There are ways in which it continues to hurt you, because a big part of it too is like a lot of it's coming from your family and stuff. So it'd be almost more like, as an example, as a metaphor, people, it would be like if the ex you broke up with that you've been dating for 5 years was your brother, and now you still have to like go see your family, and all the sort of like all of those elements are still around. Whereas in a good breakup, you can just break up and be done with that shit. But no, I actually, as far as like that rule of the half, that I think it actually does work for a lot of people, but obviously it's going to be on a curve. If you're in a 20-year relationship, you don't need to wait 10 years to date somebody again.
No, you don't have to wait for anything.
If you're in a year-long relationship, it's good to. Well, it's good to. It's good. Well, most people will benefit from spending. I'm not saying I've followed these rules. Sometimes I've taken a long time after a relationship to move on, and sometimes I've jumped from one to another, and I've dated people who have done similar things, and then also having different levels of polyamory, like all of that changes a lot of stuff too. But it is a pretty good rule of thumb. Like especially if you're not already actively in therapy and shit, if you break up and it was an intense relationship or a good relationship or whatever, and you don't know how to not take that with you and just put it down in the next relationship, you're probably going to do some harm to the next person.
For sure.
And it is a pretty good rule.
There was a study that they did about the to get over someone, get under someone, and they did find that to be effective. So if you are a person who's going through a breakup and you're interested in like a little casual something, that might be helpful. But
sure,
be responsible.
But those terms even mean different things. So when you say get over someone, to get under someone, what does get over mean?
It's
like
having sex helps people
having
move
sex.
forward.
Sure. But having sex after I was in a super abusive relationship a few years ago, and sex isn't what fixed that, therapy did, right? Like I didn't get over it through sex. I got over it through that one needed. And so it's all a matter of like whatever the parameters of that study was, I'm sure the like, oh, and I'm just thinking about them all the time and missing their touch and missing like the thing that you're going to like fix is going to be kind of that same thing of like, yeah, if you miss the sex and the affection and stuff, and you find that elsewhere, you're not going to find yourself calling that person as much as you might have, or looking at that person's social media or those types of things.
I think it helps to just like broaden your scope for what's possible for you. Like oftentimes when we have a breakup, we're thinking about, well, what if there's not a person that I will have as much fun with, whether it's sexually or not, or have as much in common with, or whatever. And then you have the opportunity to like go on a date with someone new or hook up with someone new or whatever it is. And you're like, oh, there are so many other options that are available to me. And like now I get to do some exploring. And obviously like not going to work for everyone. But
a lot of times when you're in a bad relationship too, you internalize so much of the like what's wrong with you. And so because that person's convinced you that they love you despite all of these things that are clearly so wrong with you, that you're not going to have a chance with somebody else who is going to be as patient as they were with all of your other relationship. And you're like, oh, it turns out I actually like don't suck as bad as I thought they did. And there's a lot of actually nice people out there.
There are.
Yeah. Anyway, let's jump into, let me just hit something real quick here. Let's talk to Daniel in Arizona. Oh, let me just try there. Daniel in Arizona. How are you? Daniel, can you hear me? Do you hear Daniel?
Yeah, I hear Daniel.
What's Daniel saying?
He said, I can hear you, and I'm doing great.
Sorry, it's fixed. Okay, sorry. Daniel in Arizona, you're on the line with Jimmy and Alyssa. How are you?
Hey there, can you hear me now?
Sure do.
Yes.
What's up, Daniel?
Not much, just kind of enjoying the conversation. I got the tail end of that last one, and it was interesting your guys' take on some of these things on, seeing Jesus be Mormon and stuff. That's probably something that's really tough to kind of grow out of. I was wondering, just to know where Alyssa's basis is. It's kind of funny. I called yesterday, if you remember me. You said something in a sense of like, Place of words. Were you a theist at one point also?
Sorry, it froze for a second. Do you mind repeating your question?
Oh, yeah. I was wondering if you were a theist at one point also.
Yeah, so I grew up in a Roman Catholic house. My parents are still Catholic. They like go to church every Sunday, and my mom does Bible study and the whole thing. I was never super sold on it. It just, I don't know, just never really connected for me. And then honestly, when I was in college, I think I found Jimmy's content, and it was like a huge influence into my own deconstruction. And yeah, I think most of what I feel most impacted by is the purity culture stuff that came along with the whole ideology. But
right.
Yeah.
What was the pushback on the purity culture?
Well, I think purity culture makes people feel shameful for things that they should not feel shame about. There is nothing wrong with having as many sexual partners as you want to have. And I know that from the perspective of being a professional sex educator and being in this space for the past 5 years. And theists really don't like to hear that, because it's part of the ideology that it's one man, one woman, you create a family, blah, blah, blah. And in reality, human beings have pretty much never behaved that way. And having sex is just a thing that human beings do. So as long as it's safe and it's consensual, I see nothing wrong with it. And yeah, I just generally feel like purity culture is a tool that is used to control the actions of others, and make them feel shameful for things that don't align with this image of purity. But I think it's interesting to have a culture that so greatly persecutes women for having several sexual partners, but also will spend millions of dollars every single year burying the priests who are having sexual relations with children. So I don't know. It all feels really hypothetical.
Did we lose Daniel? Because
maybe we lost Daniel. Yes, yeah, we lost Daniel yesterday too. So I think it's something on his end, maybe. But I don't know. That's my whole spiel anyway. I think it's really hypocritical to think that women can't have as many partners as they want to have, as long as it's safe and consensual. And then we have priests who are diddling kids, and then they're going to spend millions of dollars covering that up every single year.
Daniel, you calling back in? Because I was willing to engage. The question we had in the notes is, why don't we believe in a creator?
I know he had the same question yesterday, and I really wanted him to call back, and I don't think he did, but I wish he would. I'm glad he called back today, so maybe he will. I don't know.
Maybe. Daniel. All right, well, let's try. We'll go back. We'll go on to another call here for the moment, and then we'll see if Daniel calls back. Let's talk to Ryan in Utah. Now, Ryan, with the topic you're calling in on, I assume you're going to may not use the word, and you'll, like in our notes, abbreviate to R word, yeah?
Well, that's what I want to make sure of, first of all. And am I expecting to censor myself for the conversation?
Yep, certainly. Regardless of whether or not we liked that word or not, we're still going to try and maintain whatever standards are going to maximize our ability to keep the episode monetized.
Your show, your rules. No argument from me.
Cool. What you got, Ryan? You can use the word redacted. I sure do like it.
Yeah. Well, okay. So real quick, this actually, I wonder if this will get, it's Alyssa today, right? You and Alyssa?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Let's see if this gets Alyssa on my side real quick. Because I think you're wrong, and women absolutely are more visually sexually stimulated than men.
No, they're not.
More? I don't even agree with that. I was the one who argued with her that they are more than previously perceived, and that it's actually a trait of that patriarchy and misogyny has wanted them to not be sexual beings, and so that was basically a myth. But I was the one on the other side of the issue, if you're referring to something we debated previously.
Did I say women are more?
Yes.
I meant men are more.
So here's the thing that
I meant to say
always,
men are more. Yes.
So I always have a hard time with these gendered arguments because so much of this has been so heavily influenced by purity culture, especially in this country, but pretty much worldwide. Women are pretty consistently told that we are not sexual beings, that being sexual is inappropriate, and men are pretty consistently told that they are they have this inner thing where they need to spread their seed and it's a sex drive and they can't help it and whatever. So the cultural conversations that happen around sexuality play such a heavy impact in the way that we go about the world moving forward in it. So I don't really, any of the, even if I were to go back and forth with you on like research about what this would say, I don't really even hold that much weight in it because I don't think that there is an objective way to look at the way that people feel about sexuality. And so my whole stance on it is give people a medically accurate, comprehensive education, because we know that leads to fewer STIs, fewer unwanted pregnancies, fewer partners over a longer period of time, and more successful relationships over time. And beyond that, allow people to make the choices that they want to make. And so, like, even engaging in that conversation, it feels sort of like futile. It's like, what's the point? Because I think when people say that men are more sexually motivated, they're just finding a way to give an excuse for poor behavior, and for having a lack of self-control when it comes to things like consent and sexuality, or like things like catcalling, which is still a violation of consent. That's what it feels like to me. Does that make sense?
Yes, and I agree with you on just about all that. I grew up Mormon originally, so I'm also well aware of like the kind of purity culture that goes on there. I remember being convinced.
Ryan, are you though? Are you? Because are you sure you are? Because I'll tell you what, I didn't realize until a few years ago that I thought I knew what was going on there. And I knew what was going on with the men, but when you learn what was going on with the women, you might change your mind on how much and this is actually like coming back to the topic you're talking about. This is the sort of stuff that I was thinking about and referencing when talking about this concept of which one is more visually stimulated. Sure, if you're going to go with like a group of men where it was like, men, go out and find you your hot lady and whatever, and be rewarded and also punished less when you break the law of chastity, versus women, which was like, hey, women, your shoulders are pornography. You know that's literally like what women were taught. And this is why a lot of women right now are feeling very strange about how the new temple garments expose shoulders, because they were literally told their shoulders are pornography, and people are bringing up that exact line. So purity culture, obviously you got the male side of it, but when we're talking about, if you want to talk about whether or not a person in their natural state is more or less likely, I think all humans are visually stimulated. Whether or not there are other powerful stimulants that come in, then the term more is the thing that, like, what does more mean? Like, in a day, does the average man physically experience arousal in response to a visual cue more than the average woman? That could be true, but is that what you're saying is the more that we're measuring, or is it that more men are visually stimulated than the number of women who are visually stimulated? It's you almost have to have silly philosophical discussions first when we know that it is a part of every person's natural state, regardless of gender, to experience sexual stimulation in response to visual stimulus.
Real quick, from my own experience, I am married. My wife is also an ex-Mormon. Yes, we've had conversations about the kind of purity culture crap that she had to go through. I'm not unaware. And
that's good, because it's actually way worse than what we went through. Way worse.
Yes. Yes, agreed. And in regards to your question, am I saying that more men are visually stimulated or that men more often are stimulated? I think I'm talking about the more often. Like the hypothetical test that I put in my head is if you take 100 men in a room and 100 women, or 100 men in a sample and 100 women in a sample, and you march their ideal sexual partner in front of them, how many of the men, or how many times are the men more likely to become aroused than the women? And then if you did a similar test, but instead of a visual stimulation, like seeing their ideal sexual partner, it was like an auditory thing, like their significant other whispering in their ear, or compare that to like a smell of their partner, or then like a touch of their partner, like.
But you're describing in a society
sensations.
You're describing in a society where men's sexuality is enabled and women's is disabled. And so literally what would the alternative be? Like in that society, which thing are women more often sexually attracted to than men are? Because you can't even go for like some of the cliches. They're more interested in the emotional stuff. Like, have you seen the way a guy feels sexually attracted to a person because someone laughs at their jokes and then suddenly it's like, why'd you flirt with me? What are you talking about? You laughed at my jokes. Didn't you mean that? Didn't that mean you wanted to fuck me? I don't know, man. I'm like, if you're just talking about, yeah, go ahead.
So I also, and Ryan, I think you would find this really interesting. You should look into the responsive and spontaneous desire theories. And there's a theory that if you are, you basically fall into one of two categories, and that can change through your lifetime and whatever. But someone who has a responsive desire needs some sort of stimulus, some sexual stimulus, whether that's physical or visual or whatever, auditory, some sort of stimulus to start their arousal process, the physiological arousal process. And then there are some people who are fall into a spontaneous desire category. Spontaneous desire are people who are pretty much ready to go whenever. Rough gust of wind, dick is hard, they're ready. Sorry, that's going to get us demonetized. I shouldn't have said that. Anyway, but that's what spontaneous desire is. And so there are people across all genders who experience spontaneous and responsive desire differently, and they might fall into one of those two categories, and that might change in their lifetime, but it's about a 50-50 split between the genders. So there are women who are, or it might be women are more likely to be a responsive desire, but it's not that drastic of a difference. And I think part of that is when women are nervous and scared to have their sexuality be sort of like at the forefront of who they are, because there's a level of like protectiveness that they need to have, like safety wise. And so I think that they are more likely to be in the responsive desire category because they need to have the signal of safety and also the context of sexuality brought to them before they're able to access the safety that is required to go into an arousal state. So I think there's like a lot there, but both genders experience both spontaneous and responsive desire. So that might be something interesting to look into, because it is really, there's a lot of information there. And there's a book by Emily Nagoski, and what the heck is it called? I can't remember what it's called. But all of her books are good. But there's one specifically that I'm thinking of. But Dr. Emily Nagoski, you would really like her, and I think you would learn a lot from the things that she's written about.
It's interesting. Yeah, I'll listen back and get the name of the author and the study when I look that up later.
So what was the topic you wanted her on your side for going forward?
Oh yeah,
I'd really rather get to the meat and the potatoes.
Okay. So, right. I guess I already have like maybe a reputation for talking about dumb philosophical arguments when it comes to how language is used. And what I think when I say the R word is exactly the same thing that you mean when you say redacted.
Yep, you're right.
Do you think that's correct?
Yep.
Yeah, because what I'm saying, like let's say if I'm calling a Trump supporter the R word, or only R words vote Republican, I'm not referring at all to a mental disability or a handicap or any kind of syndrome or nothing like that. Like that's not a related word in my experience. What I'm saying is that a person is being so offensively ignorant and lacking critical thinking that it's offensive to the sensibilities. And so that's what I mean when I say R word. And I don't think that it's productive or makes sense to treat the R word and censor it the way we do something like the N word. Because the R word in academics still, as a verb at least, has uses in language. The N word, no uses in language whatsoever unless you're being, a racist.
Cool. So Ryan, here's what I'm going to tell you.
I feel uncomfortable putting them on the same footing.
Here's what I'm going to tell you. I'm autistic. I actually don't get offended by other people's use of the R word, but I am also a person who is going to stand up for communities of people who have said basically, look, that is a word that has been used against my community in a way that when I hear it, it brings up other stuff. So for example, to give you an example that Ryan, that you probably won't agree with, and you know what? I've had this debate with other people on this channel. I won't even say who it was, but there was a Christmas song. I'm trying to remember what it's called, but it sounds super rapey. Do you know which one I'm talking about? It's the really can't stay, outside. Baby, it's cold outside. And then somebody wrote an article that was like, after all of you people got this canceled. It turns out that the actual context behind the words don't have anything to do with what you guys are thinking they are, because back then it meant this and this and this. Now, listen, let's say that article was completely right. That person actually left out a lot of stuff. Like, yes, you are describing something that was a cultural norm back then, but the norm was also a problem back then. But whatever, let's just say it was. Let's say they're totally right and the context is completely wrong. Does that change if a person who has been date raped hears a song where a person is having difficulty leaving the home of a man who is apparently like trying to compel her to stay, and then says the phrase, "What's this in my drink?" Does that stop that person from having it? And so look, do we coddle every single person for every single experience in society? Obviously not. But have enough people been date raped and our society not taken that shit seriously enough, clearly not taking that stuff seriously enough, that if that group comes forward and says, oh, if you play that song, I'm going to be thinking about the time I was raped, that we can go like, all right, word, nobody's threatening to put me in prison. No one's threatening to beat me up, but people are threatening to say, I am going to think of you differently and respect you differently based on whether or not you use that word, based on whether or not you play that song. Bro, I feel you. To tell you the truth, the R word's the one that's the hardest for me, because as an autistic person, who I've abused the most with that term is myself. It's a very common neurodivergent thing for you to call yourself that term. And yes, I like the term redacted because I think it sounds quite like that word. And there are times when I read a MAGA say something that I'm like, this fucking redacted piece of shit, because it's a word that it can be used. It shows that I'm putting in the effort to still not break that barrier. But you're sitting here going, there is a social movement. I think the social consequence is stupid. Okay, fine. But it means something to them. It means something to those people. And when you hear it from enough people, there is a certain point where with obvious exceptions made for people who are clearly trying to weaponize that kind of thing, like people who want to pretend cracker is anything like the N-word. But it's how do you want to be perceived in a society full of people who are likely, in many cases, less privileged than you? Because even as an autistic person, I've lived a pretty privileged life. And so I'm not going to publicly use it. I definitely still think it. There are definitely times I see something, oh, that's pretty R word, right? But if you're talking about how you want to represent yourself in society, you know, there are people for whom I am happy to go eat my ass. I'm going to say the word you're telling me not to say because they're a bunch of, you know, ignorant crackers. And then there are people for whom I'm not going to do that with. And that's going to be people who generally I'm just going to try and be wary of those groups whom I have had more privilege than, or even groups that I'm a part of and have more privilege than.
I wonder if I would have had a different position already if there was someone personal in my life who felt harmed by the word, because I don't.
I think you would. I think you would.
I'm the only tip that I know. So
the first person that like will at some point in your life, if and when you come across them, that's like, hey, that word is really fucked up, don't use it. I think it starts to become clear that it's not worth upsetting people. It's like, of all the hills to die on, you know? And it's like, if not using one single word makes people even 5% more comfortable and feel more safe being around you, whatever. Then just don't use it. Like, it's just not, like, what's the big deal? There are just such bigger fish to fry. I personally don't even, like, I won't even use redacted. Like, anytime we talk about that on the podcast, like, Jimmy will say it, I don't, because I just don't, I don't know. I've tried to just not, I don't want to even, like, have that in my pattern of speech at all, but, because I just don't really have an interest in, like, potentially upsetting people for the sake of what? Like, one word? I don't care. I'll just not use it.
I'm not interested in upsetting anybody except for MAGA, and I felt like there was some utility in, like, oh, here's a weapon that they use against people with disabilities, people with autism, etc. Use that as a weapon against them, and I feel you know, justified in that way. But
the good news is they're offended by
wondering if it's worth it.
Yeah, what's even I mean, if you throwing that back at them does nothing. They're calling each other that stuff all day long.
Yeah.
Ask them about the time Jesus Christ gave you a rim job and watch them lose their minds.
Yeah, like they're realistically, they're more offended by things than the alleged snowflakes that they so often like to pick at. Like, they're offended by everything. You know what you could say, Ryan? Tell them to hang on to their hairline for dear life. Make jokes about them being bald. Like, I promise you that will go so much further. Jokes about them being bald, jokes about them being short.
I was to say, I don't know that I'd go the body shaming route. She won't use redacted, but body shaming.
Glass houses and all that. I don't dare.
Donald Trump's hair and weight are
Ryan,
on the table.
This is a place where you can reclaim, Ryan. You can reclaim, and you could be like, well, at least I'm okay with my hairline.
Hashtag not all baldies. Yeah. All right.
And
my wife accepts my baldness.
I also, for the record, I don't think that it's unfair to me that men still look good bald. Like, whatever. Cry me a river. You all are fine.
Tried.
Depends on the guy.
You all are fine.
I have to rock the half power donut because a fully bald head does not work on me.
No, I promise you.
And I'm only
a
year younger than you, Jimmy.
Oh, my apologies.
Listen, it happens to the best.
Genetically, I've got one nice thing. It's the hair, man. I promise you don't want to. I'll trade my intestines for your head. Yeah, I guess I'm tall.
No,
right.
My intestines are not in much better shape than yours are, my friend.
Oh no.
Bummer. My condolences. They're pretty bad. We are at 20 minutes though. We've got a couple of theists. waiting. Oh, brother, I'm up to like, I think I've had a dozen now. I've got a frequent flyer card. That's how many colonoscopies.
The colonoscopy Olympics is
I think
crazy.
I qualify for a free one soon.
Something that I did quote you on, Jimmy, I think one time to upset the MAGAs when Pride Month started. Somebody posted a photo of an AI Jesus in the rainbows. And so I said, Jesus is a gay little twink who likes cum in his tum-tum.
Aw. Well, look, he hung out with 12 dudes and his best friend was a hooker. You do the math. Ryan, we're going to let you go on that, all right?
Hey, I appreciate, humoring me. And you guys stay safe and have fun.
Thank you, sir.
Thanks, Ryan.
Honestly, like, to me, too, I should have said this while I was still on. It's just, we have so much work to do. And on our side, I don't want to get distracted with the language stuff either. It's kind of like, we have so much more important.
I resent priority.
I assure you, I resent also the people who that's their entire thing is just my activism is going and telling people that they're not using their language right. Like, I don't like them any more than the people who are using it. Well, I shouldn't say no more. I like them a little more, but
wait,
it ain't much.
Can I be a pain and go pee? Because I had dinner before, and the pee is happening, and I'm gonna be so uncomfortable. Okay, I'll be right back. I don't know, Jimmy. Yep. You're good at that. Say
That's all
something.
good. Say something, I'm giving up on me. Let's talk to John in Illinois. John in Illinois, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. How are you?
Just peachy. What's
Good.
Looks like you got a question here about the channel itself.
Yeah, like how you all like came to be, and like I guess like what the like at the end of the day, like when you finally like retire, transition to the next thing or whatever, like what the hope of the channel is.
So basically is it sort of, as a theist, you want to know what our motivations are to see if you can maybe see if you feel our motivations are pure versus like what, cause I'm curious. Sorry, actually, let me just say this before I answer. John, I'd actually love to hear what you think it is. As a theist, you see atheists, humanists over here. We're talking to people. We're debating them on queer issues, religion, political issues. What do you think my answer would be? If it's good enough, I might steal it.
Yeah. No, I think you are genuinely curious as to how people come to their faith stories, their faith understandings.
Not really, to tell you the truth. I wouldn't say I have a cure. I think I'm not saying that isn't a good reason for people to do a channel like this. I would say that I don't find myself any longer perplexed by why people are religious. I think honestly, I've had that question pretty well answered for me. Any other guesses you want to throw out?
You hope to convert everybody to atheism.
Well, I don't think atheism is something you can convert to, but I guess you're getting closer. It's not particularly important to me that everybody be atheist. I would settle for a humanist world before an atheist world for sure. But deconverting people so John, I'll put it the most simple. I grew up being completely scammed by a religion and gave that religion money, personality, absolute devotion. It got to run buckshot over my life, I think is the correct phrase. And I got out of that. And when I got out of it, I saw how many people I loved and cared about were still in it. And the hardest thing is that a lot of times you can't get your own people out. My parents, they're not going anywhere. And it's funny because people will call in, how do I get my parents out? Don't ask me. I didn't pull it off. That's the one that, they might be the one set of people I don't know how to have the productive conversations with is one's own parents. But, and there's a couple others, but, all I know is that that my life was worse. I shouldn't say is, because I'm in a pretty privileged state now, having some amount of power in this community and get to be heard. And we have an audience right now listening of, let's see how many people are live listening. Almost 1,400 people are listening to me talk right now. It's a pretty fun place to be. But when you're not in this kind of fun place, living in a religious world, seeing yourself surrounded by a scam that you yourself saw through, knowing how much it hurt you, it is possible to get a somewhat, I'm not trying to sound virtue signally, but my motivation is that sucked for me, and I'd like it to affect as few people as possible. And so what amount of good I can do to reducing the number of people being taken advantage of by humans who are going to take the fear of fundamentally terrifying questions to control people, get their money, get their life, get their devotion, and in other cases, even more nefarious things. That's motivation enough for me. And then I guess motivation number 2 is the money. It pays really good to be an atheist. No, it's mostly a joke. Obviously I am doing this for a living, so I'm getting to be paid to do something I would do to some degree for free, and that's nice. But it is mostly that I don't want the generations that follow, including, I don't know yet whether or not I'm going to have children. I don't want the generations that follow to be statistically committed to a worldview. Right now, you are still most likely to be born into a religious home, and I think that is a bummer. I'd like the next generations to have more advantages than I had.
Okay, I appreciate that. I'm sorry you were hurt by religious institutions and people.
I've also been hurt by atheists before, so that it's nothing you are responsible for, so you need not apologize.
So it's been years since I've been in a philosophy class. Remind me what humanism suggests, that everything starts with the reality of persons.
What do you mean by everything?
The way we view the world, the cosmos, civilization, relationships, nature begins with the reality of the human person and its existence, right?
I think you're kind of pushing it further out into like scientific questions. Humanism, you can be a fully Christian humanist. So humanism does not require that you reject Christianity, nor does it mean you necessarily have to be a skeptic. It's philosophical, but also an ethical stance, basically giving maximum value to the well-being of humans, as our well-being, our agency. I know there are other words that I want to add to it, but I'm blanking on some of them. The dignity of human life, I suppose, would be in there. I think that secular humanism, which is what I am, is something that I like to believe and think that I can demonstrate is itself rooted in skepticism, reason, science, as well as our very human, developed, evolved senses of compassion and empathy. And so secular humanism would have a rejection of supernatural things, but you need not be atheist to apply.
Gotcha. What if you have two people who have opposing ethical value systems and they come into a clash? Like, which one's right?
Well, it depends on what you mean by right. But this is actually what I like about secular humanism and non-religious morality over religious moralities, because at the end of the day, when you're saying from a practical standpoint, whichever one's right is going to be whichever one. I'm trying to think of how to put it. So if I'm a secular humanist, the one that is more secular humanist will be most right within that category. But if we're talking about a society is coming and they are deciding on which worldview they're going to go with, then you have to be there ready to defend it. And the thing that I prefer about secular humanism is that secular humanism is defensible. You can talk about the well-beings of humans, the access, the agency, and all of that sort of stuff. Whereas religious morality claims to be objective, despite the fact that it's not. Despite the fact that it's not objective, it is still subjective, even if you make God the subject, but it's also always subjectively chosen. And so morality is still going to have a subjective basis no matter what it is. And you're going to have to hope that using reason and logic, that you can make the best case and defend your best case for your moral position. And luckily, secular humanism, while not adopted in name over the centuries, has been winning a lot of those arguments, which is why previously religious traditions of things like patriarchy and slavery have stopped looking more like those religious established moralities and more like a secular humanist style, that society is seemingly century after century making natural, through having these discussions of civil rights, humanity, and the like, making natural progress toward humanism without necessarily needing a person to come and say, I am the secular humanist here to defend position A or B. But anyway, so I guess the short answer of everything is whoever defends their position the best would be the one that your best shot of adopting.
And that would be the best for society or for themselves?
Humanism definitely takes on both. Humanism you can have an individualistic, and there are certain things where the well-being of 5 people does not overwhelm the agency of a single individual. And then there are things that you do at a larger worldview. So like minor pleasures shouldn't be considered more important than the greater damage they could do. For example, right now, all the ways in which we're raping the planet with our carbon emissions, mostly from traffic and all of our oil consumption, because America is a massively disgusting consumerist society, and we are exporting all of that pollution to our manufacturing in China. And that has caused tremendous droughts and heat problems closer to the equator, which is causing people, is very much a part of why so many people are trying to move north, but then we're trying to reject them as refugees, even as we are the problem behind it all. You would say making changes to those things that may reduce humans' pleasures to allow other people to live would be something you would prioritize. But, it's not any individual thing you would ask, we would have to have a comprehensive conversation about it all.
I mean, in the scenario you just drew, you could come back on the other side of that. Well, my robbing the earth is providing people jobs. And you have an overpopulated planet by letting emissions get into the air and maybe killing some people off. We'll have more food and resources for people going forward.
I'm sorry. Are you saying that committing small numbers of genocide will give us a little Thanos thing? No, you can't play that, because we already know that math doesn't math. We already produce way more food for everybody to sorry, I just got distracted by a question in the chat. We already produce way more food than everybody in the world needs. We produce enough medicine. We have enough wealth. We have the ability to take care of everybody. We actually just don't. In secular humanism, if you're asking for the humanist perspective, there is no space for genocides for preservation.
But another person could be a secular humanist and argue just the opposite of that.
No, they couldn't.
And say there is.
No, they couldn't. Because humanism, as I already said, respects at the highest level the agency, value, and dignity of human life. So you are choosing to end human lives. Humanists generally don't even support the death penalty, right? I'm a humanist. I actually do believe some people deserve to die, and yet I don't support a government political death penalty. There is, and by the way, sometimes I think people die because I'm failing as a humanist, but there is no humanist position which says a human life, somebody else up here will be able to eat better, when once again, the actual world we live in is not a failure because there's not enough food and there is too many people. The overpopulation thing is a myth. It is a lack of a will to take care of everybody. So when there is an alternative, if you want to talk about some weird Thanos' planet situation where truly that's what we're hitting, where we have to make tough decisions, we can have that hypothetical philosophical discussion all day long, even though it's one that we're never going to hit. The actual world we live in, we have more than enough resources and wealth, and capable people to take care of everyone, we choose not to. So to say, well, maybe we should let those people down in those closer to the equator that we have abused for really centuries, but in this century, we have been abusing and taking advantage of a lot of their cheap labor and destabilizing their governments, all kinds of shit that we have done in those areas. Maybe we should just let some of them die so that we'll have more resources there. Also is a fundamental misunderstanding of global trade, as well as a misunderstanding of where the problem is. The problem isn't that those mouths are there to feed. The problem is a lack of a will to carry the food to the mouths.
You know what? On many levels, you embody the greatest ideals of Christianity.
Oh, don't you get me even started how not Christian so many Christians are. I'm aware that I have a similar leftist vibe to the supposed Jesus of Nazareth.
You have a leftist vibe to the Jesus of Nazareth?
A similarly leftist vibe to the Jesus of Nazareth. He was similarly to me
You do.
For open borders, feeding the poor, taking care of.
Exactly.
Yeah. Look, if Christians would be more Christ-like, I'd have no job.
So you're, wow, that's interesting. Yeah.
Yes.
Interesting.
Now, obviously, there were things that he failed on. He wasn't exactly progressive when it came to women's issues, for example. He was still speaking in Jewish tradition to men for what men need do. But there were, he did stop that one lady from getting stoned.
Well, I do have to say, though, without Christianity, you would not have the freedom that women have now.
And without Islam, you wouldn't have math. So just because something in the past is good doesn't mean I want to keep it going. So we got all of our benefits. We got all the great art. I love a lot of religious music. Great. Let's keep all that shit. And now let's move on with a better secular humanist world. Hell yeah.
So what would that look like, though? I mean, let's just pretend everybody became secular humanists tomorrow. Mm-hmm. No Christians, no Muslims, no Buddhists. What would that world look like?
I think it would look better, but it would be hard for me to predict. I doubt we would have such large out of control. We probably still would have capitalist societies in some places, but I don't think they'd be as out of control. I think you would see some form of socialism take hold of most of the world, where you still would have markets and you would still have the ability to get ahead by what you're putting in, but there would be a limit to all of that. When you're asking about this channel, for example, is a collaboration of, I think, roughly 20 hosts and about 4 producers. And we are all paid on a profit share model that I, the owner, am not actually I do not make the most money here because at the moment, I don't put in enough labor to be the number one receiver of money. So we use a very socialist model. You'd still have businesses. You'd still have things develop. You might have certain things not innovate as quickly. You might not get a new iPhone but once every few years but we need that new generation every year. But the sacrifice of whether or not I'm going to have an iPhone 156 by the year 2030 will mean that everybody gets fed, everybody gets housed, everybody gets healthcare. That is what I think the world. Now, if you said, if it happened abruptly with no transition plan in place, would everything just be utopia overnight? No, it is clearly something that we have been working on many levels and will take time to take care of.
Thank you for taking my call. This was very good. I enjoyed this.
Well, are you going to, I was hoping that once we got to the end of all the reasons why I'm an atheist and a secular humanist, we could get to why you're a Christian and presumably a Christian moralist.
What's a Christian moralist?
I just kind of made the phrase up that your morality comes from Christianity.
Morality is important, but I think in a nutshell, Christianity has always ideally been about relationship. Now, it's easy to argue because I was born in the United States versus China or Saudi Arabia. If I were in Saudi Arabia, I might be a Muslim more likely. If I were in China, more than likely, I might be a Buddhist.
Mm-hmm. That's true.
there is, and granted, my family was Baptist, and I just had a...
And were they the Southern Baptists or the ones that are going to hell? It's an
American
Baptist
Baptist
joke. Yeah. Oh.
Yeah. No,
Those
that's
guys.
funny. Yeah, and I have just always had this sense that God was present in my life.
Sure.
And I decided at a Billy Graham crusade years ago that I wanted to put my entire life into following Jesus.
Okay.
And there's wrestling, yes, sure. There's a strong, there are pockets of Christianity that place a strong emphasis on do's and don'ts. Every philosophical structure has do's and don'ts to it. The one that you just described has do's and don'ts to it.
Sure. Let me ask you.
I just think
with your do's and
ahead.
don'ts, what if I do the things your thing says don't? What's the outcome? I guess, John, what I'm asking you is, in your world, am I going to hell?
I always leave that in God's hands.
Okay, according to your God and from what you know from reading his book, am I going to hell?
His book is very complicated. But
the question isn't, it's a yes or no. Would you say that from your understanding, your study, because through the Holy Ghost, you can know all things. If you need to, you can pop open James, and because you're lacking wisdom, let him ask of God who give it to all men liberally and withholdeth not. Go ahead and give that a shot if you need to. In your estimation from the Bible that apparently he thinks he wrote pretty clearly or guided pretty clearly, will I end up in hell?
I don't think he guided the Bible like Mormons claim that the Book of Mormon was guided.
Well, no, Mormons claim the Book of Mormon was written by prophets of God, and that it was translated by Joseph Smith through inspiration.
Right.
So you believe that the people who were writing the Bible, let's just go New Testament, as I know Christians often like to do. You don't believe those people were writing God's words. They were writing their words.
They were writing their words because they had something that they had an encounter in their life that could not be explained.
And so the words are not coming from, so the people who are describing, as commandments are coming, or
well, with the New Testament, it's a little more complicated because a lot of the New Testament those are letters written to specific situations.
Mm-hmm.
They're not overall dictates for one and all. Like there's in Corinthians that says that women should not teach. You can take and push that to its extreme function, but actually within that context, it's been suggested that there's some conflicts that are going on, and so that's why Paul is putting such a strong stance with that.
I love when people bring that up because it's not the scholarly understanding, and I'm talking about amongst Christian scholars. So what you're describing is you won't answer the question of whether or not because you don't know based on what words should apply directly to me versus some other situation. But at the end of it all, the book does describe you having a relationship with Jesus and the Holy Ghost and being able to contemplate these questions, and also that you need to be saving infidels like myself from hellfire. And so I'm curious whether you believe a hell exists at all, or if you're saying you're not even sure that part of the Bible, the establishment of any kind of hell, exist.
Hell in the Bible is anything that's cast out. So we've done a lot of damage over the centuries describing hell as this fiery place.
Yes, I know that there's been additions from Dante's Inferno. I wouldn't say that only separation. You're talking about more of the Old Testament concept of just eternal separation from holiness and God.
And actually, we've done damage there too. So I think you can have
trust Christians to do
you can
damage
have-
to their own
you
theology.
can have-
I always will.
What'd you say?
I sure do trust Christians to do that damage to their own theology. Definitely.
Well, we do. I mean, unfortunately, we can twist things to bring across certain powers and that kind of thing, and that's unfortunate. But I think ultimately, as far as the hell question that you ask, it's ultimately in God's hands. It wouldn't bother me at all if everybody who ever existed was in heaven.
Okay. So do you believe that's going to be the case is what I'm asking you. Because I mean, you're saying that.
I don't know.
Earlier you
really
said something that's
know.
objectively untrue, which was that the only thing the Bible says about hell is separation, right? But you know
Right.
that's not right, don't you?
No. Hell.
Hang on,
hell
I'll
in
find the
Bible.
verses because I believe it's Matthew
Okay.
5, but I don't know what verse. And then I
Okay.
know that there's more in there. And
While Jimmy is looking it up, John, I want to ask you a quick question that came up in the chat, and I'm curious of what your answer would be. Someone asked in the chat if you think that it's moral to have people be condemned to hell.
If it's moral to have people condemned to hell, how do you define morality?
But now this would be how you define morality, because she's asking you if you believe it's moral to condemn someone to hell. And I think she's asking you whether or not God is doing a good moral thing by condemning people to hell. I found the verse, by the way.
We don't know. We don't know that he's condemning people to hell.
Do you have your Bible with you?
I don't, but I know it pretty well.
Mark 9:43. Do you know that one offhand? It's okay if you don't. It's not a gotcha.
Not off the top of my head. No, just read it.
If your hand causes you to stumble, well, actually, do you have a preferred version? New Independent version, fine?
Yeah,
Sorry,
that's
New
fine.
International. Okay. If your hand causes you to
Fun, by the
stumble,
way. I
cut
like
it
it.
off. It is better for you to enter life maimed than with two hands to go into hell where the fire never goes out. Do you know Matthew 5:22?
Uh-huh.
But I tell you that anyone who is angry with a brother or sister will be subject to judgment. Again, anyone who says to a brother or sister, Raka, is answerable to the court, and anyone who says you fool will be in danger of the fire of hell. So the Bible doesn't only say separation, it does start to speak of hellfire. Now, the deeper, the torture for eternity, all that kind of stuff, yeah, those things have been added, but we're not talking just separation here. Unless you want to do and I trust you not to do the very silly, like, yeah, but this time it was a poem. That one's a metaphor. You can't pick and choose like that, my friend. Not without good reason, anyway.
It's the most important thing in those verses that you read is how do I repair relationships? How crucial is that?
So we're just going to ignore the point.
I think, John, originally you called
hell
saying
is
that you wanted
that makes you miserable. Hell ultimately is what makes you the most miserable.
Where's your source on that?
My source.
Frankly,
life.
Sometimes this channel is my own hell, then. Sure, if you want to use a colloquial hell, John, but that's not what we're talking about. This is it's like when people come in and they want to use the word faith and like, well, you have faith in science the way I have faith in God. And they're clearly different concepts, a theological concept of faith versus a colloquial version of faith. And if you want to mix up a colloquial hell, but that's called, what is that? The, which fallacy is that? That is the, oh my God, guys, I don't feel well today.
That.
And usually this is what I am good at, but I'm trying, there's a word.
I don't know.
It's not redacted.
I don't understand the obsession with the hell part.
Oh, well, was
because John, I think the conversation about hell is important because that's the whole. Many times when we have conversations with people on this channel about why they believe in God, beyond the part of it that's just like, well, I just have faith, which that sort of stops the argument. I'm not gonna argue with someone having faith or not having faith. It kind of ends there, but many times people will say that they feel that it provides moral guidelines, which I think is fascinating because so many people who identify as Christians or like of the faith have some pretty notably bad morals and ethical standpoints, as far as I can tell. But another one is the fear of going to hell. It's fear based. You want to, even if you were to do it based on the moral guidelines, well, why do we need to follow these moral guidelines? Because you don't want to go to hell. And even if it's like, I'm going to follow these moral guidelines to please this God. Okay, well, why do you care about pleasing this God? Oh, it's so that I don't go to hell. It's like the main motivating factor. So it is important because it is a huge part of the reason why people participate in this religion.
Yeah. You introduced the idea early in your call of sort of basically being comparative of moral systems and which one's right. And the reason why I brought up hell was because it is so often the case that these people who are telling me about Christianity and how great it is to live on a wing and a prayer kind of are keeping to themselves that it's more like living on a myth and a threat.
Actually, I'm sorry for those Christians who have this limited definition.
Why would you apologize?
Ultimately, Christianity is about...
You didn't do it.
Ultimately, Christianity... Yeah, no, thank you. Ultimately, Christianity is about relationship. And if it's only about...
But that's your personal revelation that you have said you had this sense that God was always walking with you. Clearly, I think I can guess that you're describing that you are getting revelation through the Holy Ghost or through that relationship with God, as you keep saying relationship, that this is what all of that is about. But John, at the end of the day, I've got you and I've got Muslims, I've got Mormons, I've got everybody who calls in, and they're all telling me about how their relationship with God has given them the revelation that their version of Christianity, which is you could never call it a single system, even if you had a Billy Graham revival revelation or whatever, there's going to be some point. So at the end of the day, John, not only are you whatever version of Christianity you are, you're really practicing John from Illinois' Christianity.
But how boring would it be if everybody agreed?
Very boring. I would have no job. But
Exactly.
You know, everybody might get fed depending on what we all agreed on. Children might not be being murdered in Gaza right now. We might not be about to go to war with Iran, but you know, it'd be boring.
We'd find other things to fight about, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Definitely.
For the record, I think if we didn't become a secular humanist world and we did become an atheist world, this is something I was thinking about a lot. I think we would also probably be a super racist world. I think racism would go, if we didn't bring humanism along, we went with just atheism. I think people are so conditioned toward what you might call tribalism, or I don't remember I think you're not supposed to use that word anymore. There might be a more PC version, but they so badly want to make groups of other people suck that I think you would find some of those core issues still around. And I think you'd have tremendous racism. That's how what's his face says it. The boxer guy, Mike Tyson. You'd find a lot of racism. You'd find a lot of ethnicism. You'd find a lot of sexism. You'd find all these things that do exist right now. They would exist in other forms. It's important to win a war, a mental war, a moral war for secular humanism, and fucking stop killing literal children and babies.
But you would still kill children and babies.
Nope.
Because you have tribal differences. You have ideological differences. Cultural differences.
I would not murder I would not kill a person over their lack of acceptance of my beliefs. I would kill a person
You would,
to defend.
but they might.
I just said that a purely atheist world would probably still suck. A secular humanist world would not.
But what about an ultimate Christian world? The world you described was beautiful.
We've had centuries. Sir, we've had centuries of those. When I say a secular humanist world, go ahead and take whichever one you think is the most dominant religious power now and just switch that in. I'm not saying every single person, just a dominant culture of non-theism, like a secular humanist dominance. It doesn't have to be absolutely everybody. So I don't know what you mean. Like the world in which Christianity totally dominates. Remember that before travel was expanded by industrialization, you could basically call our world lots of worlds because the separation from other societies was so distant, they may as well have been on different planets. We've seen what it looks like when Christianity totally dominates an area, and it tends to be very, very imperialistic. It even influences our modern imperialism. So yeah, I think a totally Christian world, one that takes away agency and independence, one that wouldn't allow Alyssa and I on the, because if you think you're like somewhat, I don't even know how progressive yours is, but it sounds somewhat progressive. If you think your somewhat progressive view would be the one that dominates, you don't know the nature of the beast, because it is about power. And in a Christian dominant world, you would have to defeat those people who are going to use that Christianity as their force to gain power, whether or not they are terribly devout themselves. Case in point, Hitler probably wasn't that devout of Christianity, but was himself a Christian and certainly used Christianity to spread Nazism. I'm good with not trying another Christian dominant world experiment.
And that's the sad part, is that Christianity is essentially born out off of an empire, around an empire,
and has been many times independent of each other. It ebbs and flows. It's the nature of the beast, man. That's the book. The book's not full of everybody holding hands. The book's full of conquerors. The book's full of genocide. True. The book's full of slavery, racism, sexism.
And every time our human frailty pops up, God finds somebody who's listening, and something new happens.
Our human frailty doesn't really go away, but things get put on notice. You don't get to be a Nazi for the first 50 years after the Nazis are defeated, but they've made their way back. They're finding each other in Facebook groups. John, any other questions I can answer for you before we
No, you guys have been awesome. I hope we can talk in the future.
Yeah. Cool, man.
Thanks, John.
Thank you.
Later, dude.
Thank you. Have a good day.
Bye.
You too. Hey. I don't know if it's because I started a new medicine today. That felt like a 45-minute call.
It was close. It was 30 minutes. Also, I'm low energy because I don't feel well today.
Okay, no. I was confused because when I checked the call, like when we were going to just drop him, it said 7 minutes. And I was like,
you're probably frozen in time.
That was crazy. Okay, yeah, I'm glad that makes more sense. I was like, what? That was definitely not 7 minutes. And if it was, then I need to take a lap. Oh my God. Okay, anyway. Well, that was interesting. He was really nice.
Yeah. I'm excited to hear Josh tell me how I got Trump elected. And
oh my God. Yes.
Josh in Israel. So wait, maybe you're calling in, you want to defend Israel, or you're saying I got Trump elected by defending Israel? The notes are a little complicated.
Yeah. Okay. So can you hear me?
Sure can.
Okay. So yes. So the notes were that I am planning on defending Israel.
Oh, I see.
And okay, well, I want to start out by saying, Jimmy, that I'm very, very nervous talking, because you are one of the people, just like Alyssa said, who shaped my worldview. You helped me be a better atheist, stop being a mad atheist, an angry atheist all around, and really, ultimately we share a lot of values, although we disagree on some things.
Okay, obviously. So can we bond over this? Benjamin Netanyahu's a fascist.
Okay. Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Let's try this. I want to see if we can build from there and find where the detachment is. Benjamin Netanyahu is a genocidal fascist. Would you agree with that?
No.
So you don't think if he had the option to just purely exterminate the Palestinians, just very Holocaust-esque, that you don't believe, and by Josh, I assume you sound like you're probably in your 20s, could be older. I assume you have served in the IDF by now, right? Because it's mandatory.
Yes, I'm 45 actually.
Okay, cool. So you think that he is independent of the culture that you find in so many soldiers who are excited to be in the IDF, calling people like Palestinians animals, that they're not real people, that they don't have, that they are lesser. You think that he is a fascist, but not himself genocidal.
Like, you're saying if he had the option,
would he push the button and kill every Palestinian and then just take Palestine for Israel?
I don't know. I know that obviously members of his cabinet, like Ben-Gvir and Smotrich, would do that. Mm-hmm. Yes.
Okay.
I'm not sure about Netanyahu.
Okay. So you can at least agree that the members of his cabinet largely in charge of the war and the offensive and the IDF, that they are themselves like savagely genocidal, and that they think of a dead Palestinian baby as basically a dead future terrorist, correct?
Yes.
Okay. So what is the defense you have then? Because my argument is going to be that they are basically, I mean, maybe you don't agree that the whole thing was an apartheid in the first place, but as far as what's going on right now, do you believe it's a genocide happening in Gaza?
No.
But you do believe that the war efforts are being directed by people who would like to commit a genocide in Gaza?
Not entirely.
I feel like you're kind of trying to have your cake and eat it there, bud. I don't know how not. I mean, you have organizations that were early on, because I was talking about the genocide and the apartheid before October 7th. Early on, obviously, louder that. But now you have independent organizations and organizations that were more on Israel's side. The people who are like the genocide watchdogs saying, especially these latest instances of purposefully trying to starve out the Palestinians, that, yeah, it's a genocide. Now, we didn't think so before, but now we agree. So what is it that you have for me that you would say the insider information or whatever overrides this expert analysis, that even if I had agreed with you up until 6 months ago that it wasn't a genocide, obviously I wouldn't have, that now you would still make that case?
Well, it's not, calling it a genocide is incorrect, because a genocide is a deliberate attempt to kill the Palestinians, targeting civilians. It doesn't matter, civilians, combatants, whatever. Targeting them, and trying and killing as many as possible.
Incorrect.
I mean, again, if
incorrect, Josh. So maybe this is the problem, and maybe this is why you don't know how to use the term. Genocide means more than just what you feel like it means, because you know of a couple of famous genocides. A genocide consists of 3 parts. It is of an intent, a group, and acts. The intent portion to be a genocide, and I pulled it up just to make sure I get the words just right, is where the purpose is to destroy a group in whole or in part. The group needs to be a national, ethnic, racial, or religious group, and the acts have to be through killing, harm, forced conditions, preventing birth, and transferring children. So, displacement is included in all of that. Making the place uninhabitable is still a genocide. You could technically have a genocide without a single death. It just doesn't happen very often, but you could, because you are basically eliminating the future of these people by a combination of killing, harming, eliminating their future prospects. And as you mentioned, some of those things you did say are happening, where it is this kind of bullshit like, we're going to root out the evil Hamas in a way that we're sorry mostly children are going to die. And we're real sorry about that. Don't hear the audio leaks from behind the door about how we actually feel about it, but we're real sorry about that. I don't know how under any definition, unless you wanted to say that some genocides are righteous, which obviously I would fully disagree with, this one being a righteous one, if anything could be made that, I don't know what defense you could make that includes that this isn't a genocide.
Because we're not targeting Palestinians. We're targeting Hamas. Hamas has enmeshed itself in the Palestinians.
Josh,
what is Hamas?
That's not true. Have you seen the footage? Like, are you looking around? Like, open your eyes. You genuinely think that Hamas is in every single building that they have leveled? They're stopping aid to Palestinian people. I'm floored that you genuinely are telling me that you think that they're exclusively targeting Hamas. Josh, come on.
Josh, you would have a point. You would have a point. You would have a point if Arab Israelis. You would have a great point if Arab Israelis and Arabs in the West Bank weren't also being treated absolutely horribly. There's no Hamas in either of those places.
That is something that I argued with Owen on. Arab Israelis have 100% the same rights as Israelis, as Jewish.
And okay, Josh, there's no racism in America. Is that a believable lie?
Oh, come on.
No one said they don't have. No one, Josh. No one said there is a difference in rights. We're talking about the difference in the way people are treated, and they are treated like absolute shit from their own mouths. It's not me saying. I'm going to listen to them over you, who clearly has a lot of privilege over them. Arab Israelis
with Arabs. I'm a teacher. I work with Arabs. How is that possible?
And I'm afraid that I take their word for it over you. I'm not saying that you specifically want to kill them, but it is clear that there is at the level of the Israeli government. I'm not saying all Israelis are terrible people. There are Israelis who live right now in Israel who I care for very much. Now, most of them are looking forward to the day they can get out of there, but who I care for very much. There is no believable way where you can sit there and go, how hard is it, Josh, to be designated a member of Hamas, whether or not you've ever actually declared allegiance? It's extremely easy. You know what's hard? Escaping Gaza if you're a civilian, getting to a safe zone, eating, drinking. And you're talking about they're not targeting them. We're only blacking out their communication. We're only denying the civilians food. Investigations finding out that this whole thing about, well, when we drop food in there, Hamas steals it all. And it turns out when they say Hamas steals it all, they're just going like, yeah, those brown guys, they're probably Hamas. Because that's turning out to be a myth too, that actually civilian aid does tend to get to civilians. So it's this ridiculous thing of like, no, they're not going after Palestinians. They're only going after Hamas, which Hamas is a radicalized Islamist, and don't get me wrong, clearly anti-Semitic group that has basically formed and been radicalized by the forced poverty and apartheid over the last several decades. This isn't one of those things where you just get to ignore all of the past on everything. And you and I are fundamentally going to not agree when your whole argument is we're targeting Hamas, not Palestinians, and yet a 3-year-old with a water gun is an enemy combatant.
Right. I'm confused about how you're defending, like, at a minimum, the amount of children who are dying every single day. Like, how do you defend that behavior by saying it's like, that's just shocking to me. Like, I understand that your perspective of this is going to be skewed, but it is I'm genuinely flabbergasted that there are people who still have this opinion that it is like, do you genuinely feel like, Josh, the way that this situation is being handled is moral and the right thing to do?
That's a good question, Josh.
Ooh, did
Josh,
we lose him?
Can you hear us?
No, he's still there. He might be on a web. Josh, if you hear us, if you're on the web link, like if you're on a web browser, you might need to move the mouse.
Or tap the screen if it's your phone.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. Yes. My
There
phone
we
blacked
go.
out. Where are you getting your numbers from? Where are the numbers of dead babies coming from?
This is exactly what so now you're not going on it's not a genocide based on the concepts. You now want to challenge whether or not the numbers are accurate or not. Of course, we only have the numbers that we can get out of the area that have been to some degree confirmed, but they are also the numbers that many allied nations are running with and not finding to be very challenging or inaccurate, especially when there is so much.
All numbers from Hamas.
No, it's not all numbers from Hamas. In fact, Josh, you just did what I said Israel's doing and you denied. You just called basically the summary of the health ministries there Hamas, because what Hamas isn't a person who's actually allied with Hamas or calls himself Hamas. It's who you guys don't like. Right? So and by the way, we can also see with our own eyes the videos of the absolute destruction there, the videos of the dead children there. There is plenty of documentation to trust that those numbers of somewhere between 34 and 50,000 Palestinians dead are accurate, and that most of them are women and children, because we also know what your actual targets are. So you're sitting there going, it's not a genocide. I'm just going to sound like a genocidal maniac as I defend it using the same talking points that anybody committing a genocide would. So Josh, let's say it's not a genocide, but let's say the numbers are accurate. Is that many dead women and children okay? Are they conducting this war in an actually okay way? And do answer that directly without trying to go, well, what about what other war? Because I know that's the next one you go to.
Yeah,
it is tragic. But is it a tragic war that Hamas started?
Absolutely not.
And Hamas uses their civilians as shields.
Sir, you live in Israel. You live in Israel where you guys have literal military targets next to schools and hospitals. And that's what you call them using human shields and showing how savage they are because they have human shields. It's literally the exact shit Israel does. The exact shit.
We don't. What military targets do we have in next to schools?
In what?
What are you talking? What? There's a military base, but it's miles away.
You have multiple military. No, you have multiple. You said military base, military targets near hospitals and schools.
Yes, but not on hospitals and schools.
What does that even mean?
Not running
We're
from
talking
them.
next door.
Do you know how big Israel is? Israel's small.
Do you know how big your fucking bombs are?
Josh, so do you believe that this is a morally conducted situation? Do you feel like morally this checks out? This is what we should be doing.
Also, Josh, I love your implication that are you saying that no injured military from the IDF ever end up in a civilian hospital? Because that's the justification for the human shields of the Palestinian hospitals that have been bombed.
No, the justification is that not wounded soldiers, that soldiers are actively shooting from.
Yes, they say that too. They say that too. However, they have definitely been citing that the Hamas is being treated in civilian hospitals. I'm aware of the additional propaganda that they have done a very poor job of proving, but they won't let people go in and actually investigate, which is weird. As you're sitting there going like, I'm a humanist, I've been shaped in this way. But, I'm really, really comfortable with the fact that journalists die when they try to go find out what's happening, that that clearly marked aid workers are dying. I think that you are a victim of propaganda, and I think it's wild that you said the war began on October 7th because nobody thought that. There's actually a video on this channel of me talking about it. It's like a month before October 7th. It was in like August or September where I was talking about the apartheid situation, like basically the open air prison Gazans were already living in. This whole thing that it started on October 7th is wild.
These are the lies, Jimmy. These are the lies, Jimmy. that drove Jews away from the left.
Oh, is it?
Josh, I would also encourage you to consider that you are calling from Israel, and so you are more likely being inundated with information that would be pro-Israel. And I would encourage you to have some skepticism about the information that you're taking in. I know that that's like not what you want to hear, but it's shocking to me that you are well aware that there are vast areas of land that are leveled and that we have had aid come into the area and be taken in foreign waters by Israeli troops. So like I'm confused about how you're looking at that
so
situation.
much, but I'm loving the whole like every time you have a point, I have to respond to it with facts, and you just get to go, these are the lies that drove the left away. When first of all, like Jewish voters still overwhelmingly voted for Kamala Harris, who wasn't of the left and who was also a problem with how much she supported Israel.
Can I make a rebuttal to that?
Of what? Of which one?
About the voting.
I still would like to know, yes, respond to this, but I still am not letting go of, I would like to know what you feel morally about this situation, but respond to Jimmy's situation first.
Okay. I'm taking myself as an example and many others. We didn't vote, I'm not going to vote for Trump because he stands against everything I believe in. Trump is, they have literal Nazis on their side.
Mm-hmm.
But on the other hand, we have Kamala Harris, which have Free Palestine, Free Palestine is a genocidal slogan.
No, it isn't.
It's not
but
Free
also,
Gaza.
that's wild. That's wild to say, but
Free
also,
Gaza is one thing. Free Palestine is a genocidal slogan.
Sir, no, it isn't. But second of all, Josh, Kamala Harris was not pro-Free Palestine. Kamala Harris was at best
but on her side, you have.
What are you talking about? She also had Liz Cheney on her side. That's who she was. You're acting like she tried to appeal to the left at all. I assure you, she lost more leftists with her genocide support than she lost in overwhelmingly Jewish and Israeli support in America, because it was still above 70% everywhere. First of all, Kamala Harris is not a leftist. She was a Democrat. You literally live internationally and still make this mistake, which is weird because on the international stage, you should understand the difference. Kamala Harris was not a leftist, and Kamala Harris supported at least, I don't know where she is now, continual supporting of your offensives, not even just defensive, but offensive strategies. Kamala Harris would have been great for y'all's continuation going on. What point are you trying to make? Because no numbers work for you. Facts don't work for you. But then instead of trying to respond back with facts, you just go, these are the lies. What is it? They definitely lost more leftists than they lost Jews on her support for Israel.
The thing is, there's a large percent who just didn't vote, like me, who looked at both sides and said, I can't vote for either side.
Yep. And if you actually poll the people on the basis of why, the things happening in Gaza are actually as low on the list as the trans stuff, which people pretended were a big deal. And it turns out neither of those things were. The number one reason that people didn't vote can be summarized as, we already did Trump versus Biden. We wanted change. We got voted in Trump. We didn't get the change we wanted. We wanted change. We voted in Biden. We didn't get the change we wanted. And now Harris versus Trump is essentially a replay of the same thing over again. We already did this. You can summarize almost all of the things down to the people who abstain, because you're literally sitting there and it's saying, well, I abstained because she didn't support Israel. And yes, she fucking did.
Look, I'm looking at the chat right now, and I saw from the river to the sea. From the river to the sea is a genocidal call.
From the river to the sea?
It's a call.
From the river to the sea may be used by people who are genocidal, but it is also used by people who are not. And listen, bud, you're sitting there in a nation committing a genocide, defending a genocide, crying about people in a YouTube live chat who can't perpetuate any kind of genocide anywhere. Like, your priorities are a little fucked up here.
Oh, 1,200 dead Israelis just for being Jewish is not genocidal?
Is that what I said?
Also,
no, but
clearly,
when people say from the river to the sea,
Josh. Clearly, there are people who would have said from the river to the sea who would like to genocide them, but there are also people who would not. There are people who would have said Black Lives Matter who would love to kill all white people, but there are also a lot of people who would not. And those are the Black Lives Matter people I march with. Also, there's not that many of those. You're sitting here and you're basically, it's funny because you're saying these are the lies I am perpetuating that turn people away, and I suppose this is your defense of how I helped Trump win, as though the what did he win by? Like a couple million votes, but we would have realistically needed 8 million more in different places to actually turn because of the stupid electoral college. But anyway, for the river, you're sitting here defending and melting down and then trying to put on to me that I think it's okay or that it's not genocidal to kill 1,200 civilians. Yeah, I've never said that October 7th was okay, that killing civilians and taking civilians hostage is okay. I've never said any of that fucking shit. But also, if a murderer hides out in my neighborhood, I don't believe you can blow up my whole neighborhood to get the one murderer.
Josh, I never got a response from you, and I would really like to know, do you believe that the actions that are happening right now are morally correct? Do you think that leveling areas of land where there are, I'll be conservative, I mean, that's what it is. Tens of thousands of women, children, civilians are inhabiting these places, leveling them in the off chance that you get to Hamas, which is, I'm positive, comparatively much smaller. But we're leveling these areas and killing all of these people, cutting off aid. Do you think that this is the right thing to do?
Tap your phone again. Josh, you're quiet.
Yeah, you might need to tap your phone.
It's not moral, but it's the only choice. And it's urban warfare.
No. Oh my God. Yeah, those babies had it coming. How dare they be born into an open air prison? And
wait, what? Then why are we allowing Palestinians to move? Like in the beginning of the war, think about it. We told Palestinians to move from the north to the south. Why did we allow them? Why did we allow that?
So virtuous. Because there is a limit to what you guys can get away with. Before you ask a stupid question, Josh, maybe ask it in your head and go, oh, wouldn't the obvious answer be we can't literally exterminate all of them one by one because we live in a fucking world, and if we did, then it would be nuclear warfare between you and certain countries, or at the very least, like, right, if you did that, Russia would attack Israel. It wouldn't just be like, what these are such dumb counterpoints that all you had to do was ask them in your head and not seem, look, buddy, I think you might want to take the L on this one. Go back and sort of like learn what your opposition actually thinks, because I don't think you're realizing how bad you've come off on this call, because you actually sound like somebody regrettably delighted by a genocide. Let's put it that way. You regret that it had to come to genocide, but you know, that's what it's going to take to be safe in the future.
Yeah,
in this land you've stolen.
Josh, babe, you are brainwashed. I don't know what to tell you. You have to have some skepticism about what your government is telling you. You have to, I'm begging you. Have some skepticism. Try and find the other side to this, because I am floored by your ability to just throw your hands up and say, well, It sucks, but if that's the situation, that's what it is. Like, come on. Like, I don't believe that you are actually as okay with that as you are making it sound on this call. I'm trying to give you the benefit of the doubt. It's
Then what is the option here?
the option for what?
What is Gaza is controlled by a genocidal, anti-Semitic terrorist group. What is
I know it's crazy. You think you guys would get along because you have so much in common on that basis.
What's the option? But what's the option?
Okay, well, let's start with the things we're not doing. Let fucking aid in. Actually adopt. Shut up.
There are lines.
Okay, we had to mute you because you don't understand that when I talk, you don't. We'll unmute you in a moment. The option would begin with stop committing genocide. Then what are the options after that? It's tough because right now, so many years of violence and so many years of occupation and apartheid probably has made all solutions messy. You guys shouldn't have taken the place in the first fucking place. I actually don't support a two-state solution, but I also recognize that that's probably the best we're ever going to get. And allowing them to have a robust economy and independence and respecting their sovereignty and have allyships and shit, there's going to be lots of different things. Now, am I the master of knowing what all those should be? There are much, much smarter people than me who should be able to figure it out. But the genocide, not genociding, because you've gone from, I don't know what a genocide is, to what other option do we have but genocide? And I got to tell you, if you're on the side that's defending all the dead kids and moms, you might not be on the good side. Doesn't mean that I think that the government of Palestine, if you just pulled out and they were left to their own devices and Hamas did take back over or whatever else, that would be a place that I would want anyone I love to live. Probably wouldn't be. And so clearly more has to happen to make sure that they, as a nation, develop into something less like some of their neighbors, because a lot of their neighbors suck too. But a lot of the region is coming around to being a better place, and tends to be that if you aren't interfering on such a level to where you are constantly destabilizing their government and forcing massive groups into poverty, that they tend to not prefer those more radicalized state. Because just like America and 9/11, do I think 9/11 should have happened? Of course not. Do I think Osama bin Laden was the sole perpetrator of 9/11? No, America fucking did that shit to themselves. Right? We're responsible for it. That's what the history shows. And you're very much that meme of, is it Eric Andre? Is that the guy where he's shooting? And how could they do this to us? Go ahead, Josh.
Okay. I'm sorry I got here, but the thing is that it's a cop-out. You say, stop doing genocide. Mm-hmm. And I ask, well, what do we do? I don't know. There's more people that are bigger than me. I said
far more words than I don't know. And so you are literally using a reductionist argument tactic to, I acknowledged where my limitations were and that there are people who I trust because I am not an expert on foreign policy or ending genocides. While, again, Josh, this is why I'm saying you might want to take the L and try and come back later, because what you basically just did was go, well, I'm acknowledging it's a genocide, but I don't see any other thing we could do, when the very beginning of your call was this isn't a genocide, almost suggesting that if you did acknowledge that it was a genocide, you would then have a problem. But once you got to that point, you actually started defending it instead of staying morally consistent. I'd say take the L.
Josh, if you find out that your cat has fleas, you don't set the house on fire. You take it to a vet and you see what else you could go. You take it to an expert and you figure out a solution that works best. What Israel is doing is setting the fucking house on fire because the cat inside it had a flea. Like, it doesn't make sense. Like, I'm not saying that I have the answer of how to get rid of fleas, but someone sure fucking does, and it's not setting the house on fire.
I think you might find too, Josh, that if you were born into a similar amount of violence done upon you, you might find yourself in a bigoted form, murderous of the individuals who are doing them to you. And so as that seems to be the defense of like, they're going to grow up to be terrorists. Yeah, you sure are trying to make sure that happens by killing their families, by killing them in some cases, but by killing their families, by just forcing them to live in rubble and poverty. And the fact of the matter is what of your allies now, which countries now think that the amount of response makes sense? I think every country is saying, we're not really doing this right. We're not taking care of the civilians left behind correctly. And at the end of the day, you've gone again from it's not a genocide to okay, it is, but what other choice do we have? So maybe go and figure that out.
I never said it was a genocide, but I said it.
You have tacitly agreed. I know you didn't say the words, but you have used it as the premise of your future arguments. I think you need to listen back to the call and maybe spend a little time with the opposition and try to get to that next level of argument, because these were basic things that just sounded real bad, Josh.
Okay. Can I end with just one observation before we go?
Yeah, I know my hair's beautiful.
When I am an atheist, but I'm ethnically Jewish.
Mm-hmm.
And just like I can't tell a trans person what is and what is not transphobic, and I cannot tell a gay person what is homophobic or not, and I cannot tell a woman what is misogynist or not. I, as a Jew, when I hear from the river to the sea,
mm-hmm.
when I hear free Palestine, not free Gaza, free Palestine, okay, those are genocidal cries.
Mm-hmm.
And so, as an ethnic
and here's
Jew,
the difference.
I'm the only one who can say that.
No, you're not. And here's the difference. You described three groups over whom you have power, and therefore you shouldn't say those things to those groups because you have a level of privilege that you aren't able to even conceptualize. But you also have the power. It would be you have the power over the people you are committing the genocide on. And by the way, I don't even fully agree with your premise. I have fully argued with trans people on whether or not they're right about something is transphobic, because guess what? Not all trans people are dope. I'm pansexual. I've definitely argued with gay people about queer issues. And you know what? I can't think of a time, but I bet I've argued with a black person over whether or not they're calling something correctly racist. Not everything that comes out of the mouth of a minority is right just because they say it. And I'm aware of too many people who, for example, Candace Owens, I'm fine with arguing with Candace Owens on what is and isn't racist.
Jimmy, I can't hear you.
Well, I don't know what, nothing's changed on my end. I don't know what to
cut out
say.
a little, Jimmy.
Oh, did I cut out a bit? All I'm saying is, first of all, I don't even agree with the premise of it, but you're literally describing, you guys are you have the absolute fucking power here. You're in Israel. Right? I'm not sitting here doing any anti-Semitism to you, and I can't meaningfully do anything to you, but also wouldn't, because I don't have a hatred of people who are ethnically or religiously Jewish on the basis of those things. But I do have a hatred of genocidal maniacs like Netanyahu and his cabinet. I think it's crazy you don't think he's one of them, but whatever. And you are talking about whether or not the people you are committing genocide on are saying something genocidal. It's pretty fucking different.
Okay, well, I think we'll call it here.
All right, thanks, Josh.
Thank you for taking my call.
Yep. Bye. Bum, 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 bum. I'm very I have a drop of Jewish in myself. It's just a drop according to my 23andMe, but yeah, I got a drop.
That was wild. I feel like I've done a shockingly good job at creating a little vacuum so that I'm not exposed to people like that very often.
Mm.
And it sucks because he started the call saying like, this is a hard call for me to make because I really like admire whatever. And that's really nice. He's so brainwashed. Like, so like for
But
a person
what
who
you're
like
saying
follows
is,
this channel, like you should have a better handle on skepticism than that.
but I think what you're fundamentally saying is usually when a person tells you that they like you and that they're a fan of you, usually like that grows from then. I am so comfortable and used to the idea that it is all downhill from that moment. That's a totally different experience.
But it's also like how are you an atheist, and presumably that would mean that you are skeptical and looking for the truth in things, and you have so willingly accepted the version that Israel has fed you, and you can see with your own eyeballs Palestine and Palestinian people being absolutely wrecked and leveled. It is rubble. And you're gonna like the level of ignorance you have to believe that is just, that was crazy. I give you credit for like trying to,
People don't know they're wrong until they find out they're wrong. And so I don't know. I got a lot of patience and not a lot of energy, despite what people think of me. Let's see.
That was crazy.
This next one might be short. So what you're saying is you feel exhausted. I feel like I've done a bunch of Kegels.
Just now?
I feel like that whole conversation was a big Kegel. Kegel is what I meant.
It was. A little. It was a practice in restraint, that's for fucking sure. It was, at some point, I said like one thing, and I was trying so hard to not be like so angry that I was not productive, that I saw on camera my whole face get really red because I was just trying to like, and keep it together. But like, you have to be joking. Come on.
Yeah. All right, let's talk to Ted in Washington. Ted, this might be short because I might just be about to tell you that you need to just call tomorrow when you can talk to actual trans people, including, I think, a politician tomorrow. Is the doctor on tomorrow, or is that? No, it's Luxander and a politician. So you can talk to a politician and an activist tomorrow. Yeah, what's up?
Oh, yeah, I've called the TACIS show a lot, but
they're the ones to call.
I think, so you guys probably support the chemical sterilization and mutilation of children under the name of trans-affirming healthcare.
Hey,
Ted, please.
Wait, Ted. Let me try this. Ted, let me see how much you like it in response. Hey, do you like the perpetuation and continuation of both emotional and physical abuse that's perpetuated on minors? Because that's how I would word a ban on trans healthcare. And so if you are for a ban on trans healthcare, then you do like emotionally and physically abusing children. See how this isn't honest? And if we actually just sit here and we actually talk more in terms where we in the middle can say like, hey, at least you're representing my point in a way like you believe, like you understand my position, and you understand, and not use this sort of inflated language to make it like, hey, Ted, when did you stop beating your wife?
Okay, so I'll phrase it this way. Do you support blocking children's puberty, injecting them with cross-sex hormones?
Ted, did you start hitting them more lightly? Your wife lighter first, or did you stop altogether?
So do you support that?
Ted,
I support that?
Here's the thing. Children typically don't receive any of that treatment. It's a big propaganda message that they do. They're not getting surgeries. And if there are people who do take hormone blockers, that is a reversible process. It is safe and it is reversible. So
do you believe
there are kids getting surgeries.
Real quick, Ted.
They are not.
Hey, Ted, do you believe that there was when I was 16, I got a surgery kind of like this, and my body was mutilated by a doctor? What would you say needs to happen to that doctor?
Are you going to bring up the gynecomastia shtick? That's what you guys always do.
I don't even know what the fuck what that word even is. No, what should happen to my doctor that mutilated my body?
I don't know what the procedure is. If it has a valid healthcare basis.
If it has a valid healthcare basis. Okay, great. So if it has a valid healthcare basis, I agree. My gallbladder should have come out, even though I probably would have survived. Except it does.
It's completely anti-scientific.
Except for Ted, except for that, you're just asserting that. Whereas
no, it's based on stereotypes. The whole thing is based on boys like blue, girls like Barbie.
Hey, Ted. How are you ever going to learn if you're wrong if you only talk over? You just say a cliche, and then when somebody starts to respond, you go on to the next thing. It's called a gish gallop. You're trying to just pop in as much information, hear nothing back. So you're not actually interested in a conversation. You're not actually interested in a conversation. You're interested in saying your cliches. Who would determine whether or not trans treatment has a basis in healthcare?
So there have been a number of different reviews of a number of European countries, including the UK,
that's
National Health Service.
You're not answering the correct question. You're going with reviews that have happened. Who should determine? A person in what occupation? Maybe we'll make it easier for you, Ted. I'm going to try and dumb down as much of this as I can. Which occupation of people?
A doctor.
Doctors, right? The healthcare industry.
And Dr. Cass has that.
The healthcare industry, the healthcare review. So what is the overwhelming consensus of the healthcare industry, especially amongst those in relevant forms of healthcare to trans issues?
So the United Kingdom has socialized healthcare, and their National Health Service did a year-long review. And at the end of the review, they found that there was very little evidence, and they decided to stop.
And who did that review?
Was
was the review done by the healthcare industry there, the NIH, or was it fundamentally politicians
NHS
who did the review?
No,
the politicians at the NHS, not the doctors. Yeah, don't get me wrong. They had people there to testify, and just like you have, RFK Jr. has no actual medical training. The overwhelming consensus amongst the actual relevant healthcare professionals is that transitioning is what is good for people, for their mental health, for their physical health, that they end up with better outcomes when trans people are allowed to transition. And so you're just sitting there and going, it has zero, it has none, it has none, it has none, which already shows that you don't know what the fuck you're talking about, because I'm not going to sit here and go,
I know what I'm talking about.
I'm not going to sit here and go, it has 100% of it. Because I acknowledge that there are studies out there, and I also acknowledge that I don't. And yet you said no. You said there was zero. Except no, Ted. You said there was zero basis. You said zero basis, Ted.
Yes, now there is. There is now because they looked at it.
Because politicians agree that these things don't matter. Because Ted Cruz agrees that that's wrong, sir.
Because they're low sample size. Because they're bad studies. They're overall terrible studies.
I like that you're just saying
why this affects you. Like, why the fuck do you even care about this?
I mean,
if this is a decision that is going to happen between the doctor, the parent, the child. Why the fuck does Ted from Washington have? Why do you need to have a say?
Technically, people get to decide what they want to care about, and because
I know, but I would like him to tell me why he cares so much.
He's not going to tell you the truth. Why he cares?
I know he's not going to tell me the truth, but I want to hear how he panders.
What about Chloe
They are
Cole's
not
story?
being
Have you read her story?
sterilized. They are not being sterilized, Ted. Like, that's just not. It's just
Chloe
like
Cole had
not.
a mastectomy underage. It's true. You can deny it all you want. It's true.
Sir, have you ever heard the phrase "the exception makes the rule"? There are always extenuating circumstances where you're going to be able to go pull out individuals. It's funny because this is the dumb thing you all do that makes you. Oh my God!
It's rare.
Jesus fucking Christ!
He's agreeing.
It's rare. I'm against it
it's
anyway.
Rare because the policies exist that it's not supposed to happen for people under 8. Oh my God, Ted! We can't do this if you won't shut the fuck up when I'm talking. I've been zen with every other caller I've disagreed with, but you insist on fucking talking over me, Ted. Jesus fucking now! I call TACIS tomorrow. I'm done with it. You're bad at it. You're dumb. You're just making a broad generalization.
Care is abuse.
I give a. Okay, great. Now you're
muted.
You're fucking wrong, and you haven't actually said anything except they're bad. You're bad. All right, fucking.
You're wrong.
You decided to hang up before I was done, so you got to talk over me, but I don't get to talk to you and make my point. So guess what? Now you can't call tomorrow because you're fucking banned. You're not an honest interlocutor. Who the fuck would want to talk to you? Notably, girls don't. And this is why you have this problem.
It's also insane to me that this man gives a shit, but then is also then going to turn around and say, "I'll give it to you. It's extremely rare." So why do you even need to pick up the phone? Why do you need to pick up the phone? This is the same issue that I have with and I've said this before on Chewed Gum, and I probably have said this on the podcast too, but I have this issue with every single person who has such a strong opinion on healthcare related issues, including abortion. When people get in the weeds, and we saw this with the Charlie Kirk thing in like a perfect
Don't spoil it yet, because
example.
the next call is going to be an abortion call. We don't want to scare them off.
Oh boy. All right.
Oh,
wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm excited. Now, keep in mind, we're both here. Obviously, Alyssa, this affects a lot more, but I make points with a penis and the voice of a man. So I'll probably take point on, I'm just kidding. I do love abortion debates, but I'll try and remember my place here. I almost said mistress at the end to be funny. But I feel like people who haven't seen us on the podcast would be like, that was weird. Meanwhile, on the podcast, you and I are talking about butthole creams and.
No, we're so weird the whole podcast.
Yeah, we've.
This is the least peaceful you and I have been in like the longest time.
The fact that neither of us have not said anything horribly sexual and out of pocket this whole show is crazy.
Very unlike us.
Very strange. All right, Kara in Alberta, you're our last call of the day. You're a theist calling from good old Canada, and you want to discuss the morality of abortion, somehow tying it to donating an organ. But then also, I guess, let me ask you this, Kara, and you may have to tap your phone if it's gone to sleep or anything, but in here, the notes, it says, the question is, would it ever not be admirable to choose pregnancy, such as if you are a minor? Just like it's admirable to donate an organ. I'm not sure how you connect the two, but I have no problem telling people who do decide they want to have a kid, like, good for you. As long as they're not doing so selfishly, they're not like forcing that kid into, if you don't have the resources to support a kid, I don't think you should have a plant. Don't have a succulent if you can't support it, let alone a freaking baby. Sorry for swearing, Kara. I didn't mean to get so crazy already. Go ahead, Kara.
Hi, can you hear me?
Sure do.
Awesome. Okay. Right. So, right. This, it's the question is like a real life situation. Big trigger warning. It's my trigger warning for suicide and trigger warning for child sexual abuse.
Okay.
So anyone listening doesn't want to hear about that, just take a break. But my maternal grandmother, committed suicide when I was 3, and I was told that a large contributing factor to her doing that, obviously it wasn't the only factor, but this is what I was told, was that when she was 9 years old, she was date raped, and her parents made her have an abortion that she did not want to have. She believed it was murder, and this contributed to negative mental health throughout her life. So parents have to make medical decisions for their children. So it wasn't her choice, but so I'm just pro-choice.
Also, and look, Kara, I'm just going to be very straightforward with you. Her getting an abortion is not what caused her to commit suicide.
I know.
The problem here is nothing to do with abortion. It has to do with the society that treats people with abortions as murderers. The fact that she adopted that societal view that she had committed murder. And then obviously we can't go back and investigate all of the elements of what happened surrounding that, her depression, surrounding the suicide. I mean, her depression and the things of that nature. And by the way, we can't even investigate whether or not a 9-year-old being date raped would have committed suicide later in life, regardless of if there was a pregnancy or abortion involved.
A 9-year-old carrying a pregnancy to term would die.
Possibly. Crazier things have happened.
Yeah. I'm just thinking, regarding bodily autonomy, if someone believes that abortion is murder, they have a right to make the choice that's aligned with their moral views. So, even if someone's only reason for keeping a child is that they thought it was murder, and if you convinced them it wasn't murder, they would abort it. But they happen to believe it is, therefore they're being morally consistent within themselves to keep it. Like, that's why, like, I would be pro-choice even if I thought abortion was murder, because I just think it's ambiguous enough that people deserve the right to make that decision for themselves, right? I don't think it's murder, but hang on. I guess you kind of already kind of answered what I was hoping you would. You were like, it's not murder, therefore her belief that it was irrelevant to whether she should have had an abortion or not. I guess the question is supposed to kind of direct to what factors we think are relevant to people having autonomy. Like, she was a minor, but if she was allowed to make the decision herself, she would have kept it, and then she would have died. So I think she would have died, right?
Sure. I also doubt she would have kept it.
If she was allowed to make that decision
At
herself.
9 years old, when they tell you all of the health risks of giving birth as a 9-year-old, they'd basically be saying, like, just so you know, you might live, you'll probably die. Also, the likelihood that if she was surrounded by people who thought that the abortion was okay, that she would have maintained the belief when having to actually defend it, that abortion is actually murder. If anybody with any proper education in embryology is talking to her about what this means, what phase this thing is at, how anatomically insignificantly different it is from any individual sperm or egg in your body until perhaps a moment of sentience arrives, and even then, still debatable. It's tough because, as with anything in our life, and I'm realizing I'm already doing it, so I'm going to give you to Alyssa in just a second. But as with anything in our life, we centralize the story as we understood as it happened, and that's what happened. But you're talking about a ton of what ifs. And as far as it goes to a 9-year-old, I don't know perfectly how to solve the issue of, I both don't think a 9-year-old should be able to be forced by her parents to carry a child, nor do I think a 9-year-old should be permitted to carry a child. Therefore, I guess almost even as a policy, I don't even know that I care that the parents be a part of it, but at the same time, I don't agree with expanding government powers to a certain point. The 9-year-old should not be permitted to keep a pregnancy, period.
Right. Okay. So yeah, the intent of my question was to kind of find out if there's a limit to yours, mine, whoever's listening, assertion that bodily autonomy is the most fundamental right, because you don't think a 9-year-old is permitted to carry a child ever. And like, I instinctually agree, but for the sake of discussion,
we don't give children autonomy, for the record, legally.
Parents can choose to give their children autonomy, right? Like,
right, which means right. Okay, the government can choose to give me autonomy, but the government can also choose to take it away. Therefore, I don't have autonomy, if that's correct, right?
Right. So
the child doesn't have autonomy.
Okay, yeah, a child doesn't have autonomy. Let's say, to kind of give a different example to the question, this scenario is what introduced this question to my mind, but I'm not asking about the scenario about my grandma per se. I'm also just wondering, is there any situation where you think it would be more moral to intervene with someone's bodily autonomy regarding their inclination to carry a pregnancy to term? So, like, another example, and this is shakier because it's not an example from someone who I knew, but like, if someone was really, really poor and already had 10 kids, and like, they want to keep a baby because they think it's murder, but you don't think it's murder, and you think that bringing that child into the world would be a mistake, period. At what circumstance would it be okay for you morally to intervene with that person's autonomy and make them get an abortion?
The example you've given doesn't actually, we already have a system in place for that. Because if they're poor but has 10 kids, somehow they are providing for those children enough to not have those children taken away by the state. And so whether we should have better protections for children, for sure, that's definitely a thing. But
I'm not talking about America. I'm talking about in hypothetical land. Like,
no, I wouldn't live in a hypothetical land where if a person is so poor that they can't support 10 children, they would have already kept those 10 children. So you're talking about a broad policy, and it would be important that one versus the other exist. As far as like when you want to know when I and presumably Alyssa would support forcing an abortion on somebody.
Unless they were a minor, then you would force an abortion on them.
No, I don't know if I would force an abortion on a minor. Well, a 9-year-old. The thing is that the word abortion doesn't. Abortion means something else than what it just is. Because, for example, giving birth is a type of abortion. Like if you have a quote unquote late abortion, you can call even a late term abortion. Delivery is an abortion. So it's the abortion of a pregnancy, the ending of a pregnancy. So that premature abortion of it. And I don't know the right words to say, and I don't know what the right policy is, but preventing the further development of an embryo into an actual fetus, I would say, is where the first interventions begin. And I think it's crazy that already has, that we use the same term. And this is why they get so many political fucking points. We use the same term from stopping a zygote to becoming an embryo to a fetus, and a fetus to a baby, and ending any of it during any of those phases, we just call an abortion. It's fucking insane. So I don't know. I feel if we have a more nuanced conversation, yes, we can discuss about. I would have never let her zygote attach to the cell wall in the first place.
I mean, if you're curious, she had run away from home and got involved with a 21-year-old and didn't come back until she was already quite along. But and
I hope somebody in your family beat him to death.
Oh, I sure hope so too. I don't actually know. What was I going to say? Actually, Alyssa, you want to speak while I think about what I was going to say?
I should shush.
Yeah, I think ultimately when we're having these conversations about bodily autonomy and about abortion, we're talking about the law intervening. And many times when we're having these conversations, and this was actually what I was going to talk about earlier, many times when we're having these conversations, it just never feels appropriate to have politicians and the law intervene, and it feels much more appropriate to have healthcare providers and the parties involved make that decision. So even in the example of the woman who has 10 children and is expecting another, I don't think that it would be appropriate for the law to intervene and require that pregnancy to be stopped. But I do think that there should be better support and guidance for people who are looking for it. And so in the event that someone is financially planning, and maybe there are some places where this exists, but in the event that someone needs support financially planning, saying, I have 10 children, I'm barely holding it together, I have another on the way, I don't know how I can do this. Having someone who is supportive and relatively neutral would be really helpful so that they can make an informed decision along with their doctor, along with like if they have a partner or whatever. And then in the situation of your grandma, which I'm so sorry that happened. That is such like a tragic story.
Yeah, I feel I didn't know her. She died when I was 3, but I feel bringing it up as a hypothetical, as like a discussion point, but like it's an interesting discussion. Yeah,
it is. It's a super interesting discussion, and I'm sure you've thought about her a lot as this conversation has come up. And like, you know, you're in Canada, but seeing Roe v. Wade be overturned here, and I'm sure it's come up for you at least in your mind and in your heart quite a bit, because it's what a unique situation and a heartbreaking situation. And while I still don't think that it's a situation where the law should intervene, I think it is a situation where the doctors and parents should be able to provide the support and guidance of your child will likely not make it through this pregnancy. I'm sure the baby would have, even if she did, I'm sure the baby would have some health issues. Like a 9-year-old's body is not meant to carry another child to term. And just arm them with as much information as they possibly can so that they can make a decision that is supportive of everyone involved. I think where it gets hairy is when people who are politicians, like I was about to bring up the example of Charlie Kirk before we picked up your call. Charlie Kirk doing the debate at Cambridge and talking about where along the line life is officially life, and like, when each DNA from each person is combined, is it new DNA or is it existing DNA? And I was like, what the hell are we talking about? Charlie Kirk is not qualified to have that conversation. And so in that same breath, I don't think that politicians are qualified to have these conversations. And by that token, I don't think that they should be. And so the long and short of it is, I think legally the choice needs to always be there. And the choices should be made based on the guidance of a doctor, the decision making of a parent, or a partner. Like I don't know. That's how I feel.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right as far as the real world goes. But when I ask the question, I'm asking more philosophically than politically.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think
it froze out again.
Okay,
Sorry,
we're
people.
back. If it were my child who was 9 years old and pregnant, I absolutely would end that pregnancy without even thinking twice about it. Because there is no way. There's no way.
Yeah.
You can't you can't emotionally regulate not having the crusts cut off a sandwich at 9. Like, there's no fucking way you're emotionally regulating having a child.
That's the thing. But on that point, Jimmy said earlier that if she had everything explained to her, she would have chosen to terminate it. I didn't know her. She's a hypothetical person to me, not a real person. But when I was 10, I adamantly argued to my parents that if I was ever like kidnapped and murdered or whatever, they should not support the death penalty, because if that person died, they would go to hell and I would go to heaven. And Jesus loves everyone, so you can't kill anyone ever. And like,
I don't think the government should kill people, so I would have still said that.
That's cool.
That's why I didn't say I hope that her.
Can I finish, please? I respect you and I love your input, but can I please finish?
Okay. Well, you had mentioned something I said, so I was just clarifying.
Okay. Yeah. Do you want to clarify first then? Sorry.
No, go ahead.
Okay, right. It wasn't the government that was like, my dad was just saying, like, if anyone ever hurts you, tell me and I'll kill them. And I was just like, but daddy, murder is wrong. You know, like, as a small autistic Christian child who's very, very set in their morality, if I had been pregnant as a child, I would have wanted to keep the baby and no one could have argued me out of it. And then I had a martyr complex as a Christian child, and I'm really glad I'm not a Christian anymore. But I'm just saying, like, sometimes kids don't listen to reason, and that's why they can't have medical autonomy. But you just saying that, like, she wouldn't have kept it. I'm like, no, you don't know that. That's all.
Yeah, 9-year-olds are stubborn as shit, and you're right, especially because kids also, little girls are often given like baby dolls to play with, and so yeah, I'm sure that would have played a part. I mean, and 9-year-olds like just don't make decisions like a person whose brain is fully developed because they're baby and they don't know.
Okay.
They're just.
I feel like we've wrapped that up well. I have two other questions.
I still have something to say.
Oh, okay. Yeah, go ahead.
So the thing I was going to add was, as their medical arbiter or whatever you want to call it, I'm not even sure that I agree that the parents should have ever informed the child they were pregnant. Everything should. I'm not sure that your grandma needed to know any of that stuff happened.
She did. She got her period really, really young. and she ran away with the 21-year-old and was having a sexual relationship with this guy. It's a sad situation.
Yeah, I'm saying I whatever medical
crazy.
procedures needed to happen, I'm not sure I would have had her in the loop that much. I had medical procedures when I was younger that I now understand much more. But you don't know much more than you're going to the doctor and have those things going on. Obviously, that there's much more to the tragedy of that. Thing. But at 9 years old, I think that I would have probably kept from my daughter the knowledge that she was pregnant and would have gotten it removed. And that's probably maybe talked about it when we were older, but I don't think I would have let my 9-year-old daughter know that that was the result of her rape.
She already knew. That's why she came home. Yeah. Right. Okay, other question I wanted to ask. Would you let a 9-year-old donate a kidney to save someone's life?
No.
Cool. Other thing I wanted to say. I forget. Shit, I forget. It's not going to come back. That's okay. Really good talk. Is there anything else you guys wanted to add?
I'm good.
I don't think so. Thanks, Cara.
Okay. Yeah, thank you. I can't say I really enjoyed that in a happy way, but I definitely enjoyed that intellectually. Thank you.
Cool.
Thank you. Have a good night. What an interesting call. What an interesting show.
Thought it was going to be combative. We never did get around to asking her why she believes in God.
I think you were up and walking when I said, what I wanted to bring up before he picked up her call was it always drives me crazy that the people who are having conversations about abortion are in the Charlie Kirk Cambridge debate situation. When they were getting so granular, he was literally about where life begins. And he was like, well, at this amount of weeks, the DNA from each party is combined, and then that creates new DNA. And then the person in Cambridge is like, well, it's not new DNA, it's existing DNA that's being and I was like, this is the stupidest. This is what are we doing? What are we doing?
When something is alive, it has nothing to do with when it has a right to life, by the way. Not everything that is alive has a right to life.
Yeah. And but it's also sorry, go ahead.
I was saying, trying to reduce it down to some abstraction of so then technically, if it's human, literally individual ovums and individual sperm, all are alive. They're alive themselves. Those things are alive. Yeah. We're not saving their lives. The placenta is the genetic twin of the thing it delivers. We don't put that thing on life support. And that's got all the combined DNA. What the fuck are you talking about? Yeah.
It's just that conversation is so useless to me. When it gets to that point, that's when I'm kind of we've lost the plot. This is what you're talking about is never what I'm talking about. I don't what the fuck are we talking about?
Also, yeah, I've seen a chat. A good point. We probably should have pointed out your grandma didn't run off with a 21-year-old. Your grandmother was groomed and kidnapped. Regardless of if as a 9-year-old she said she wanted to do it, there is no such thing as consenting to that at 9 years old.
Yeah, that's crazy.
And that's everything also, about that.
It's crazy, and I'm sure that I don't know if she's Cara or Cara, but it's crazy that I'm sure as she gets older, she will come across she as an adult will come across 9-year-olds and be like, that's as I get older, kids seem more and more baby to me, and it's I can't you think of a 9-year-old, they're in first grade. They barely know left and right.
Yeah. Sorry, I'm trying to get my I gotta get a certain system up over here. Is that wrong? What did I break? Okay, we're good. Oh yeah, we can switch back to the name tags here, by the way. Let's fix that there. Yeah, we're gonna do super chats here in a moment. I don't know. I was thinking about I wanted to come up with a good 192. Well, that's weird. My numbers should be right, and yet I don't seem to be making my way downtown. It's strange.
Downtown.
Yeah, the whole thing. I mean, first of all, it can be uncomfortable when you get into like a conversation about like the correctness of the abortion of my grandmother who was fundamentally like raped by some douchebag. I was trying to come up with an example of when would I be willing to force an abortion, and things that I'm like getting kind of close on is like, there was the story of the woman who, I'm trying to remember what organ it was on, but she had an ectopic pregnancy on somewhere crazy, like her spleen or her liver or something. But because she believed abortion was murder, she wouldn't get an abortion. And like she had absorbed that whole thing from people around her and shit. And so something there, like, it's almost like, I don't know how, like, you like take somebody into custody or what you would do, but something about that makes me feel very much like somebody failed to intervene in a way that should have. I don't know if you, but at the same time, I'm also like so anti-death penalty that I don't think you give the death penalty to anybody, because the government shouldn't have the right to dish out death penalties. And so it's kind of hard where I'm like, I don't know if I want to give the government the right to force an abortion on situations in which I think it's justified. Because again, there are people who I hope get killed or die. Like, right? You can be sufficiently evil that I kind of hope you get, whoever the 21-year-old was in that story. I hope somebody killed them. But I wouldn't support the government doing it because I don't support the idea of, look at every power we've given the government and how year after year after year they figure out how to stretch it a little more and use it on a few more people. Just apply it to a couple more. And I ain't about giving them that power.
Yeah.
All right, let's do them old super chats. Send in your super chats now if you have a question for Alyssa or I. And don't forget to catch The Line Has a Podcast, new episode. Well, first of all, there was an episode this last Monday, and there should be a new episode this Friday. You should have a new episode Friday morning.
And if this is the first time that you're seeing me on this channel, watch Chewed Gum on Tuesday nights.
Yeah. I'll do things other places at some point soon too. Probably on my channel. We're going to be doing vertical streams because apparently that's the secret to getting the crazies out.
Gotta get the kids.
Send in your super chats now, people. If you want to see both of us on more things, that's what you got to do. Bobtailed Trucker, reading is fun. Learning from those words, priceless. Did you say that? Did you say reading is fun?
I did not, but I do like to read.
I didn't say
$9.99 from Caleb Martin. Do you have a favorite workout, Jimmy, or a least dreaded workout?
Kayaking or rowing. If I'm like doing something at home, I got a rowing machine. But if you think my body is from working out, the changes. If I always see in every chat, there's always somebody who's like, "What happened to Jimmy? He looked like he pooped himself out." I kind of did. This is mostly diet, almost entirely. Nobody insisting I'm on Ozempic this time, so that was nice. I'm on Nozempic. Hashtag Nozempic. Nozempic. But if you're on Ozempic, good for you. I'm glad you're getting healthy, as long as you're not abusing it. $10 from Sarah Talks Podcast. Alyssa is best Bandicoot and needs to explain this to Jimmy again. No, I remember. She wants to bang Crash Bandicoot.
Yeah. Thanks, Sarah. Yeah. I also saw you emailed me. I haven't gotten to it yet, but I'll get to it tomorrow. $9.99 from 99's what?
When Sarah, well, I wanted to know when Sarah talked about our podcast, was it positive? It says her podcast is called Sarah Talks Podcasts.
Oh.
Which I assume means she talks about podcasts.
I know she has a gaming channel, but I don't know.
I think it's actually the Sarah Talks Podcast, but I'm being
that feels
pedantic.
Right. Yeah. Okay. $9.99 from 99's Some days I am especially regarded.
You know, you'd actually have to give 3 more of those super chats to have 9 9s. Right now, you only have 3 9s. Or you could give $99,999.99. Oh, that only gets you 8. You'd need 909. Wait.
We're getting there. We're figuring it out.
999,900. No. You would need 9,999,999. No, that's too much. I need to knock 2 of those because the cents. We were doing the cents. So I think I was right the first time. 99,999.99 cents. No, that's right. So 9 million.
I gotta be honest.
$999,999.99. Okay, I was right. The 9 million one.
I need you to know I didn't put a single ounce of my brain power to helping you with that. I literally just like let you just whatever you needed to do in that moment, and my brain like glazed over, and I was like, and this is what Jimmy needs to do for the next couple of minutes.
For the record, my brain kind of glazed over too. I dissociated. I don't remember. Who am I? Who has a podcast? The line has a what? Podcast. Where are we at? Greg Markowski says, thanks for the show. Thank you, Greg Markowski.
Thanks, Greg. Tens Wallas from Dave Thomas 94. Being accused of being MAGA has to be the insult of the century.
Ooh-wee.
Yeah, that I would be so angry.
Was I accused of being MAGA?
You were accused of helping Trump win.
Right. By the person who didn't know what a genocide was, but was pretty sure Israel wasn't committing one. Bye. Zachary says, think I just caught a coworker before he fell into the alt-right pipeline by asking for details about a dumb pro-Nazi story he saw on Insta. He didn't even realize he had nothing until I asked. Yeah, unfortunately, that probably is more indicative of his character. And you might find that he goes right back to it just through a different path. You got to stay on top of it.
Yeah. $10 from Ryan P. The real reason the show started late today was Jimmy was busy moisturizing his posterior after an intense bidet session. We've all been there.
I still haven't picked out my moisturizing.
We talked about that on the podcast, I think,
on the
right?
bonus show, yeah. Yeah, what to use when excessively
it's so funny.
buttholing. Sarah Talks Podcast says Jimmy is also best bandicoot. What does that mean?
We're just bandicoots. We're just all bandicoots in life. And we love Sarah. 10 pounds from Harder Gamer. We had some good news on abortions in the UK. It's looking like it's not going to be a crime at any point in pregnancy term, not just 24 weeks like it is now. Wow. Progressive. I wish people cared about women like that in this country.
It was interesting for the longest time that America had a more progressive abortion policy with no limitations. It's all between you and your doctor. Then, and the hard part is like people think we're trying to head toward a policy of we want the policy to say you could have an abortion in any. I want there to just not be a policy. It should be between you and your doctor.
Why are we talking about it? Right.
Fucking conservatives want more laws for people on their bodies. Mod says, if Ryan needs a slur to use on Trump voters, he should use mediocre, as in mediocre white men like the oxygen thief who murdered Minnesota Democratic legislative leaders on Saturday. But I heard from right-wingers on Twitter that was the Democrats who did it. The lefties did the murders, I heard.
$9.99 from Daniel. Jimmy on the line is now a rare but welcome treat and 0 calories.
Fucking... Unfortunately, it's not going to be that rare this month. I'm pretty sure I'm back Sunday, and then I'm back on the 29th. A bunch of people, time conflicts, all kinds of shit. And they were like, could you get in there?
It's the summer. People are on vacation.
It's harder when a producer misses. It can't do a show because then it's got to be me. And there's a new producer that's been training that people will, I'm sure, hear about in the future. But it's pretty much got to be, it's kind of one of those things where like, I'm going to be producing or supervising producing anyway. So why would I tend to not take the producer cut if I produce with another producer. So like if I'm training, I let them take the whole cut, the whole profit share. So then I gotta, if I want to make a nut, I hate that phrase. That's like I gotta get my. Have you ever like been talking to men who I don't know if they say it to women, but men when they're like talking about the money they need to get, and they're talking about, so I got to get my nut when it comes to, and they're not being sexual, but it is sexual.
Yeah,
I had a lawyer say it to me once. He's like, it's an interesting case, but where's my nut? And
I'm lounging now because we're on hour 3 and my legs hurt.
Amateur.
All right. Do you know how to say this
Mr. Boricua.
Okay.
Boricua.
You're the only one aside from me. You're the only one aside from me who seems to not have a problem.
Rolling the R.
So, yeah. Everyone else on our channel is not...
I do forget. I was surprised I got it right this time. Did I get it right? We might be about to get a correction.
Mr. Boricua.
Is this me though?
Yeah.
I think we skipped one. I think Luthien, I think we missed this one. $10 from Dave Thomas 94. Infinite torture for finite crimes is not moral. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. Yeah, and that was something I was going to bring up with the person, but they were very much obfuscating on the question of whether or not I'm going to hell or anyone's going to hell, and the whole thing. They don't even know what they believe, dude. They're kind of vibe checking Christ these days. And just going with what feels good.
Vibe checking Christ these days. Speaking of vibe checking, did you see the clip of Trump being like, World War III? I'm not sure if we want to do that. We have enough going on here. Hard pass. Did you see that?
And yet he's doing it. He's basically confirmed we're at war with Iran.
It sounds like one of his kids sent him a TikTok, and then he was like. And then he learned hard pass, and then he used it.
Do I want to do World War III when I'm trying to launch my crypto? Because the crypto coins, my currency, hard pass, I'm going to hodl, and that is so not on fleek. Frankly, it is off fleek and skibbity. No. Frankly, very skibbity, very skibbity.
Oh my God. I asked for that.
You know I'm rizzing you. I am giving you the total riz. I am the Rizzler, the one that comes in the night, and in my depends. Anyway, Mr. Boricua says, I feel Josh knows exactly what the devil is going on, and what you're describing. He's actively buying into the narrative on purpose for the sake of pleasing the local tyrant all-father, however, not sure if real or not. I would bet that Josh has toiled with some inconsistency to what he's demonstrating his values are to what is going on, and that there is probably a family element that is significant, perhaps children in the IDF, perhaps being surrounded by, I'm going to guess that he sounds like the kind of person who cannot let himself get there, and it's because he's being watched in a way. And so I'm going to bet that there's a big social familial element.
Yeah. $10 for Maud. Neither people deserve states at this point. Revoke statehood and run the land as a condominium under the UN General Assembly, bypassing the Security Council until the end of time.
I don't agree with that at all. The Palestinian people do deserve a state, and I also don't believe they deserve to have had the state take them. Now, if you're saying don't allow the radical, the people who are the shitbirds on their side to run that government, that I would say there is something to. But no, I would definitely not say. I don't know who deserves a state more than people who've literally had their homes taken from them time and time again, and have now had their current homes reduced to rubble. They're constantly having to move in extreme heat back and forth through the different parts in the hopes that they're not going to get killed by some kind of raid. When the raids, they keep accidentally crossing those lines where they weren't supposed to. If you're a child going through that experience, the idea that person doesn't deserve some big philosophical change too, of the idea of you now have a statehood here. I don't think I agree with. I say we just let Israel have Florida. Why don't we just move Israel to Florida? Who cares? We don't need Florida. let them have Florida. I don't know. It's okay. It's all, we'll give some of our stolen land so that they don't steal so much land.
$9.99 from Kayla. Oh wait, no, I think this is you.
Yeah, why don't you do it? I'm refreshing something.
All right. Here. From Kayla Albertson. I am so proud of my chat of From the River to the Sea. Got him to spaz out. Great win for me today. LOL. Great job with that call. Love you guys. Jimmy, go fuck yourself. And Alyssa is queen. I like that my thing is nice.
Almost
thanks, Kayla.
Perfect live chat. I will say, I think we have left the word spaz behind, but
is that in the thing? Oh.
Yeah.
Yes.
I think we're leaving.
I believe we have as well. But thank you, Kayla.
Just to try and remain consistent with some of the things we talked about before. Now, I'm not calling it the S word. Clearly, it's not as significant. But if you didn't know, Kayla, I'm not. This isn't an admonishment. Just letting you know, people might be like, it's not great. It's not great. I know in England, it's used a whole lot. And so that can be hard for some people. I think it's England. One of those European countries really loves it. But anyway, thank you so much, Kayla. How dare you? You're canceled. Space Barbarian says, my mom showed me a textbook for her education degree. It had an IQ scale with qualitative words for different ranges. The R word was 1. I recall idiot was at the bottom. Well, I don't know what to tell you because I still think the word a lot. And also, I feel like you can find those. Mormons have a lot of swear word studies that when you then go and find an objective study, it turns out that swearing tends to be done more by people with higher IQs. But it's one of those things where it's like, you shouldn't put too much value in those things when evaluating an individual. For example, I like titties, but if you have a room full of titty lovers, more of them are a higher percentage of them are going to be Republican. But I am not a Republican. So one should not judge my political views on the basis of my enjoyment of titties. And that's what I've always said.
And I've always said that.
This one's all you.
$10 from Mr. Boricua 10. Okay, I now have no idea who was worse this evening. Josh being a genocidal fan train hopper, or Ted being absolutely infuriating with trans issues. Oh my god, I forgot about that call. He has a bad obsession with this particular subject. It was giving obsession because he gave he has called multiple times.
I don't think I'd have done it with him, but he kept fucking look at how combative we got with other people tonight. But nobody talked over each other. That's the only reason he got dude, what homeboy earlier called me a liar. I didn't hang up on him. The reason your ass got hung up on is you can't have a fucking conversation. Transition into a better listener. Oh God. I'm proud of that one.
That was crazy. Transition into a better listeners.
You can't afford the surge. I do think it's different from racial slurs because those imply a person has certain qualities because of race, did we break out again?
Yeah, we froze for a while.
I don't use the R word, but I think it's different from racial slurs because those imply a person has certain qualities because of race, which is not true. R word refers to an objective trait of a person. Yeah, but not really. It's I think that the movement against it actually started mostly by parents who had children with certain conditions that were being made fun of, and we were mostly accommodating how much it hurt them. But there were also children with Down syndrome clearly being hurt by it as well. And parents not wanting to my child with Down syndrome being bullied, sometimes physically and being called this and this and that, also bad. And so I think that's enough. That's just kind of enough where you're look, to tell you the truth, okay, there's a couple of things. One, I don't care if people use it around me. I don't really call it out that much unless they're being fucking ridiculous about it and be wow, so this is the height of your ability. You're so articulate, you have to go with old words and you haven't updated your insults since 2005. But realistically, not only do I not care, I find it frustrating that I notice almost every person I've ever met who is really against it, that I've met behind the scenes, says it at some point. They have certain situations in which they do say it. And so I think that's just kind of happening a lot. And I think it's more about our louder, what am I even trying to say? I think it's more about, I don't know what I'm trying to say. I think it's about the conversations we're going to have. Jimmy needs to spend time with disabled adults and children. Don't I do that every day that I spend time with myself? You know I'm autistic, right? You know that's a word that's been largely... Are you suggesting I'm not taking it hard enough? Because I also agree it's not a big deal with it's compared to something like the N-word. Also, by the way, all of my school years, I volunteered with programs that were basically partnered you up with kids who, and then I have a brother who I love very much, who is very, you call him more on the low functioning, nonverbal. Well, he's kind of like half verbal. Now he has words he can say, but he's also like mostly blind. He only has sight in one eye. He's the best. He's actually my favorite person. And then I have another sister she's kind of like what you might call medium function. I don't even know what the right terms are anymore for that, but on the spectrum of, I'm obviously in a much more capable, I can blend in. Well, I wouldn't say blend. People figure it out, but I can live in society. Now what? Jamie, you're talking out of your ass. What did I do this time?
Okay, I'm gonna read this chat. $10 from Secular Felinist. Just got my Zerba shirt. # fire Jimmy. I didn't know about this Zerba thing until now. So funny. So silly.
Are people, I don't actually understand what some of the live chatters are. Are some of you actually sitting here defending that like the R word and the N word are similarly bad? Because I would actually say you need to get some racial sensitivities checked if you actually believe that. It might be mildly racist to hold that position. Jesus Christ, you do not know what the history of the N word is if you think the history of the R word is equal.
Yeah.
Holy fuck.
Yeah.
Where are we? $20 from Isla Ursus. I love seeing Alyssa on the hang up. Can't have too much Alyssa. And I've always said that.
There are some people who would disagree with you. And I don't fucking know them. $10 from Killstorm SH. 2-part message. Hello, I'm an alcoholic who's stressed over not being able to quit. I'd love to call in one day. I'm an atheist. My family wants me to attend the Catholic AA meetings. I actually am curious if anyone has any resources for AA that are not religious.
Well, there's Recovering from Religion does. They do addiction related group stuff. And then I've actually found a lot of like local places do as well. So there's back in like Denver, there was a group called Secular Hub. And as I recall, their calendar had a lot of like secular group therapy essentially. Mm-hmm. But yeah.
I can continue this one. It's the same guy. I got laid off and lost my insurance. I got a new job and my insurance doesn't kick in till 7/23. I don't really want to attend church inspired AA. Well, we are, so first of all, great that you got a new job. That's great news. Check out Recovering from Religion and see if there is a way that they can best support you. I'm sure that there is a way they could do that. Oh, also, Secular Organizations for Sobriety is one that I'm seeing in the chat. So check that out as well. And Smart Recovery is another one I'm seeing in the chat. So I think that there are resources for you, but lean on Recovering from Religion as well, because they can also help you find other resources.
Yeah. Bobby Kennison, let me use my bigger chat over here. I'm getting too old. Bobby Keniston says, what does Melania get every time she goes down on Trump? Depends. Waka waka. On another note, I think Josh and Ted would be more pleasant if they found each other and bonabone, calm themselves down. Look, I believe it or not, I understand that it was one of the more offensive calls, but I actually don't think that Josh, was it Josh or John? Who was
Josh?
Josh
Israeli
was the one defending
was
the genocide. Oh, John then was who I was thinking of. John, the Israeli is the one I don't think is a lost cause. I think he's just right now having a hard time deconstructing from propaganda.
Yeah, agreed. $10 from SJL. Ted mentioned Chloe Cole getting a vasectomy. If Wikipedia is right, she is AFAB. How did she get a vasectomy?
She had somebody else's balls installed so she could vasectomize them. That's how crazy things are going. These trans have gone too far.
Left. It's crazy.
I'm going to donate my testicles to somebody who wants them. So
oh, no.
Y'all can, maybe I'll auction them off beforehand. Let's see. Misty Nipples. Hey, how are you? Our freaking hero at the RFR
Misty Nipples is such a great name.
She's the best. Great show tonight. Felt like a podcast with calls. Hashtag go fuck yourself, Jimmy. Hashtag love you soon. Love you soon. I forgot about love you soon. Love you
That's
soon.
Really cute.
Remember that?
I don't think I was a part of Love You Soon, was I?
Was it you or Promise? We were saying
I think it was Promise.
Love you and talk to you soon at the same time.
Oh,
and I said, love
so
you soon. I'm like,
cute.
oh my God. And then it became, it's a podcast thing then. Love you
That's
soon.
really cute.
I can't wait for her to get back to a schedule.
Oh my God, I know. I miss her so much.
Do you see all of her like talking about her move to Finland and how much she loves it and start to like selfishly worry that she's going to stay?
I don't think she will actually stay. I think
I think they both have stuff they have to do in America.
Yeah. Also, like just me and you hoping to fucking God that she doesn't stay there. We're like, no, she can't. She can't. There's stuff she has to do here.
I worry about us becoming a kid like kidnappers. You know what I mean? Because we will come and get you.
No, I will.
How do I
hold her up?
I'm about to do the speech from Taken. Yeah.
Yeah.
But we have a podcast.
Oh my God.
Podcast that makes living a nightmare for people like you. It's kind of true.
No, we make life so delightful for everyone who listens.
But we're always talking about the worst shit.
Yeah, but we do it in a way that's like oftentimes silly, and then we talk about silly stuff too. So I don't know. Yeah. $10 from Emery King. I'm dyslexic.
Apparently so is. Oh God.
That was horrible. I'm sorry. I'm dyslexic, grew up labeled with a learning disability, have always been made fun of for how my brain works. I 100% am on Jimmy's side with the R word. I catch myself calling myself it in my head too.
Yeah.
It's so interesting, like how like people have such different
experiences with that.
Yeah.
Like I said,
really not universal.
Nobody uses the word in a bad way more than neurodivergent people aiming it at themselves. It's hard not to when you're just like when you recognize and you're having self-awareness of your separation from everybody else and what makes you so like socially strange or for me it often be like just reviewing something that I didn't grasp that everybody else had ease with grasping. You just end up just absolutely terrorizing yourself with it. I think this is the last one. People send in a super chat. I think we were doing, because it's Wednesday show. We were doing ones of $10 or more. So send in your super chat now if you want to get on the board. 10 Australian dollars from Emma L. The best insults make you think at least a little. My current favorite insults are, you are the human version of the warm side of the pillow, and you look like you should be sealed under crate. Is that how you pronounce that?
I think it's Crete.
Word.
I don't know if I understand. Isn't Crete in Greece?
I don't know. Probably.
I feel dumb. I feel like I'm not getting that one, but I do think that you are the human version of the warm side of the pillow is really funny. And this morning I was on the phone with my bank because I was trying to pay for something and it wasn't showing up in my thing. So I had to call them to do it. And the guy was so nice to me that I just I kept saying, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. And I kept saying, you're so nice. And then I was like, I need to think of something different to say. And what I said was that I hope he always gets green lights and never stubs his toe a day in his life. And he literally was like, I've never had anyone say that to me on a call. And I was like, well, I hope, I really do hope those things.
Is it? God, I'm so cynical. Because you're just describing being so nice to a man, and I'm like, congratulations, you have a stalker. He is going to come and just take you.
Oh, mother.
You are nice to a man. What, like, have you heard what we've done in history? Like, oh my God. By the way, I'm watching, I just finished season 4. And just started season 5 of You. Can I just address that season 5 so far sucks and season 4 ended sucky? I don't know if you guys like that series. I liked that the actor in it after season 1, because I was uncomfortable with the 2, was like, you have to make me more obviously the bad guy, because I'm getting fan mails from girls who wishes that Joe was their boyfriend. Anyway, it really sucks, dude. Like,
I don't really watch that show.
Oh, Love You Soon was me and Sarah Gibson. Okay, my bad. I should remember that. I feel like I've betrayed Sarah now. I'm gonna quick run through some of the well, this one's reading is $5, even though it was $9.99. 99 said, some days I am especially regarded. Gypsy Unbound said the LGBT plus suicide hotline will be shut down in 30 days. I believe once a specific generation dies out, the rest of us can right these wrongs. I sure fucking hope so. And that's disgusting that that's happening. I mean, I think that there will be versions of that will pop up. And, you know, I don't know. To me, I'm like, if I had the connections, I would try to figure out how to massively get a massive funding endowment into RFR and see if they could literally like replace it, since they already do a version of a crisis hotline for people going through religion. And, you know, obviously they take queer calls, but they wouldn't be able to take the entire nation of queer callers that one was doing. We don't have the resources, because I'm sure that operated on millions of dollars a year. One-Eyed Heathen has said transfugee here. Sunday, my MAGA mom called me to dead name me and claimed to be a plebeian in the same conversation. We need shows like this. Am I crazy. Missing what that word means?
Where are these super chats that you're reading?
Yeah, there were some $5 ones that we didn't take. Yeah, I don't know. Plebeians are about people from Pleiadians. Wait, is your mother claimed to be an alien? Because that's what I thought it meant. And I was like, I don't think this is the same. I think that's what they're saying. Okay. Mr. Biscuit Speak says, you're not talking to an apologist right now. I am one. Bring up Lamont. Great show so far. I don't know what any of that means. But I hope you call if you're an apologist sometime. TaylorMade 28 says Alyssa needs her own shirt that says I need to take a lap. I would definitely buy. June said that is pretty funny. Josh, if you think only Hamas is being targeted, you have to admit they're doing an absolutely shit job. Yeah. J-Lock says I cringe at the R word, yet. But only when. What's that?
Sorry. We had our producer asked if we read the one on the screen yet. And I said, no, not yet.
I cringe at the R word, but only when I don't know if I can trust the person saying it. I'm also autistic and relate to Jimmy's take so much. Thank you for redacted, LOL. Yeah, that's the hard part is I was so conditioned using it also growing up. That word was like the all the time word. You used it a lot growing up. And so it's kind of nice to have a word that kind of sounds like it, just so when you accidentally almost say it a lot. Cause look, it did not delete itself easily from my vocabulary. I don't know. I stand by redacted. This redacted motherfucker. Also, I think it's funny that we just never talk about the spirit behind it. Like, we only talk about the specific words. And I'm like, bro, I've seen a person never swear at all and say things as hateful as a very like queer phobic slur would be with full rage in it. So maybe we should talk more about bullying, at least at the same level. But whatever. Anyway, Killstorm says, I got laid off and lost my insurance. I got a new job. My insurance doesn't kick in until 7/23. I really don't want to attend church.
We read that one.
Okay. Killstorm, I hope you do find what you need. Jamnik says, get a nut could also be about squirrels stocking up for winter. Sure. Like how blow your wad is also about a wad of cash, but to compliment Jimmy, say, go fuck yourself, Jimmy. Free Jimmy says, free, but it's spelled Frey Jamais. So I don't think they're saying free Jimmy. What would a Christian do if they walked in on Jesus molesting a child? Turn the other cheek? That's too edgy for me. Opening bids. One-Eyed Heathen put in their opening bid for Jimmy's dangly bits. And Killstorm also said, found a group called Mostly Agnostic Groups of Drunks in my area, LOL. I think I might go to that. Sounds like the group I'm looking for. Okay, I'm not sure that that's a recovery group. You're going to want to check that because some people after religion do enjoy more heathenistic lifestyles and more to them as long as they're not hurting other people. But anyway, that's the last $5 one. I only read all of those because I realized we didn't clarify well enough. And so I just want to make sure. Let's go ahead and get our last $10 ones in. And I think Jamnik resent there. Okay, wait. I got to find where we left off. We left off with Emma. So, you want to read this one?
Sure. $10 Australian dollars.
Yep, sorry. We left off with this one.
Oh, we did. Yeah, the pillow. We did that one.
Technically,
okay. $10.
This is one of the $5 ones too, but he sent both, so we should do it again.
Okay. $10 from Jamnik06. Get a nut could be about squirrels stocking up for winter. Like how blow your wad is also about a wad of cash, but to compliment Jimmy, say, go fuck yourself. Hashtag Team Zerba. Hashtag $10 super chat. Hashtag sex coach with the most.
You know,
Thanks,
if we were in our bonus show, which only goes out to patrons for the podcast, we do a bonus show, basically an extended version where we talk about really unhinged stuff. We'd probably be talking about how I don't have to fuck myself anymore. I got somebody else to do it.
That's crazy. I haven't.
Alyssa's a sex coach, and that's often where our conversations
we just have,
go.
Yeah, whatever.
Let's see. Taylor Made says Alyssa needs a shirt in the merch shop that says, "Oh, I need to take a lap. I'd totally buy one." Go fuck yourself, Jimmy. Actually, that said Jimmy, go fuck yourself. But
whatever.
Go ahead.
$10 from Emery King. Yeah, when you have been called it your entire life growing up in the 90s too, when it was thrown around so much, Jimmy and I probably had similar experiences, except I was the weird homeschool kid too.
I was not, my parents didn't like me enough to homeschool me. I was very little homeschooling. They were like, no, go to public school and take the bus. But then of course, literally my sisters, as soon as they were in school, as soon as they started letting them go to like partial days, they did like part homeschooling, part school. Sisters were never allowed to ride the bus. Not those precious girls. But if somebody wants to go ahead and abduct Jimmy on his way home, that'd be fine. I don't know what I Am the Darkness is. It was a $5 one. So, but if Jimmy's fine with the R word, unless someone is calling him that, it's telling you call yourself that. Unless someone is calling him that. I don't care if somebody calls me the R word. I don't know that the phrase Jimmy is fine with the R word is accurate either. I just don't get that hung up on this shit. I feel like if you look at the last 10 years, we've gotten really distracted with the nitpicking sorts of activism, and it turns a lot of people off. And it's there. You have to decide, what do I want? Progress or to be right? You know what I mean? And you can be the most right with zero progress, or you can let some shit go and make incremental progress. And I just think that we have done a really bad job in fact, I think we alienated so many people in a lot of the ways that we have fought in the last several years that it started to go, usually you are at least making slow progress. I would say we had some amount of regression. And I'm not saying that means tell them they're right, tell them they're great, or say nothing, but making the biggest focus of everything just like a bad word choice or something. I just, or being like, oh, wow, you're a really hateful person. There's so much wrong with what you're saying, but I'm going to focus on this one word that you've already heard the lecture 100 times on, and I'm going to be the one to change it. It's kind of like just showing off you're right for the sake of being right. And I am not above this, people. I think arguably, if you go look at my debate style in the first couple years of this of this show versus now, I was more interested in showing off to everybody how much better I am at this than they are. And now I'm actually interested in trying to see if I can get the callers to think even a little bit. Just a touch. But also I still like the occasional dunk.
$15 from Cats Meow. Hashtag Team Zerba for life. Hashtag Alyssa's my heroine. First live stream was amazing. Keep up the great work, y'all.
I do think it's
Thanks,
funny
guys.
too. There is a coalition of people who actually think we should reclaim the R word, that like autistic people and other neurodivergent people should be allowed to use it. And there's some level of that I'm like, all right, I can kind of appreciate that. But the thing that's weird about it is that if you look at the reclaiming of other words,
Mm-hmm.
the groups that reclaim them usually reclaim them to use within their group as a positive way or even a neutral way.
Right.
And I'm like, you guys are trying to reclaim it and still use it as a slur. So
that's interesting.
That's weird. Like if I'm with another queer man and we're using like the F slur with each other, we're not using it as a slur. We're using it positively, ironically, it's our reclaiming of a word. Or women with how many slurs do you guys have specifically? Is it like 100? It's a lot.
So there's so many that I feel like women now use for each other that like I actually kind of forget that they are intended to be slurs.
Yeah. And you've been kind enough to share it with the queer community because boy, nobody seems to use it's weird. My experience in the queer community is no one uses bitch more than gay men and nobody uses the F slur more than lesbians. Or actually, honestly, bisexual women. Bisexual women love to introduce. Oh my God. To a point that I actually think they're using it a little bad. To a point where I'm like, you guys need to ease the fuck off because the fact that you are always calling each other and introducing your gay friends as that without getting the approval first is kind of fucking whack. But whatever.
No, it is.
It's a little much. It's a little like I would say like if you are a more masculine lesbian, not talking about a trans person, but what you might just call like a butch lesbian, them I'm kind of okay with using it more too, because I'm like, you've probably had this weaponized against you very similarly to the rest of us. But it does seem like the people who use it the most flagrantly in the queer community seem to be the people who would have had it weaponized against them the least. Like, it's almost like, I'm going to sound a little bit, this isn't going to be my best moment, people, but you're just going to have to deal with it. There's almost something about meeting like a hot bisexual woman who only figured out or like came out and did more than just making out with girls until only like the last year or two. That when I meet them, I'm like, oh, this girl's going to call me it a lot. They're just gonna think that that's okay for them to say a lot. There's something about that when you're in specifically queer spaces too. It's strange.
As a bi woman myself, I've never really used the F star, but I also just in general don't use any of those words because I just don't.
Yeah, I don't want to give the impression. I mean, most bi women are doing it. For the record,
I don't want to play with fire.
But when but when you hear that there's somebody in a space that is using it a lot, I feel like it's 60% of the time it's specifically a hot bi woman. It's like someone's kind of using it a lot. I'm gonna have to pay attention now. Overusing it. But again, they're trying to do it in a fun way, not as a slur, but like, oh my God, this is Brit. What guy do I know named Brit? Brett. This is Brett. He is my bleep boyfriend. It's just tough. It's just weird. Thank you, Emery. Emery's got my back tonight. Sometimes Emery stabs my back. No, I'm kidding. But Emery's like, this problematic take is a little real. Yeah. Anyway, it's rough. Emery, you definitely get the vibe check on I think you get that term as much as you want.
You get the vibe check is so funny.
Yeah. That's not me trying to give out a pass for it. I'm saying I believe Emery is within the group that would have had that weaponized against them a lot. And if I'm misremembering, because I'm using they, them, if I'm misremembering your pronouns, just give me a shout. Let me see. I think we're done. We done? I think we're done.
I hope so. I'm sleepy.
Producer, will you let Alyssa know, who will subsequently let me know if we're done, because only Alyssa can hear.
she just asked if we read the one on the screen, and we did.
Excellent. Should we end this the way I usually end it?
Yeah.
I guess we got to get through the list first. I think
the
way I usually end the podcast, I've probably been ending all shows this way. This is our list. I think this is the updated one, because I updated it earlier. This is the updated list of our highest tier patrons. Remember to go to patreon.com/calltheline if you want to support the line. And we have more activities and stuff coming for patrons soon, but you also get the extended bonus episodes, ad-free episodes of our podcast, The Line is a Podcast, which you can also find on YouTube, the regular version on Spotify. all of those things. Everyone, that is the show. And for that, I'm sorry.